Here we are. I was just texting you.
You were.
I was. What's this red light district we have behind us?
I don't know. I saw it. I liked it.
What does it say?
It says cigars.
Oh, nice. Excellent. Excellent.
I don't even know why I really bother with the whole background thing, considering you never see it, because all you see is our giant heads. So I could just do this.
But that's okay. It adds character to it. But I don't like this. I like the other way better.
I don't either. It's too much.
This is way better. Way better.
Oh.
I see you got your JLB Morelia shirt on.
I do.
Love it.
Gotta represent our brother in arms, Mr. Jacob Bratz. Oh, look at that. THP.
And the background matches my brand new Venom Life hat.
It does. I need to get a new one. I got mine back in Daytona last year, and I think that's going to be the running thing, is like every year I get a new Venom Life gear hat, because by the time that next Daytona rolls around, that thing needs to be replaced. It's pretty old, pretty gross.
Yeah. I'm a hat snob. I love hats. I love baseball hats. I probably have over 100 baseball hats.
I have such a hard time finding ones that fit properly.
Well, it's because you and I have giant noggins, size 8 plus.
That's why I love the Venom Life one so much, that I got from Brent, because it fits and it fits comfortably and it doesn't look stupid.
And you got one of the mesh backs, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not a fan of trucker hats or like mesh back style. So I got this one, which is the twill, which I remember touching it at Daytona and thinking, oh, I got to go back and buy that. And I just never did. And I procrastinated. And then I saw they had these nifty new hat clips, which is super cheesy and corny. and I spend most of my day explaining to people what the hell it is. But I thought that was pretty freaking cool. And I was like, you know what? Let me get it. And it says twill on there. And when I think twill, I think of like itchy wool for whatever reason. I don't know why, but this hat is super soft. It's the same like softness of like a dad hat, but it's not a dad hat. It has a shell shape to it, which is exquisite. But I'm also going to do Venom Life plug because we haven't really talked about it.
I was going to say, yeah, we have I just placed an order. I got 3 hooks coming from them. So,
excellent. Excellent.
I use the THP discount. So if you need a hat or apparel, be it shirts, hoodies, I think they even have leggings. That might interest Ryan Cox. Hooks, drawer pullers, pretty much anything on the Venom Life Gear site. You use the code THP at checkout, and you get 10% off everything. Everything in the store.
Which is awesome because not only are the fans of THP and Snakes and Stogies and Herpetoculture Magazine getting a discount because we're all part of the snake crew, you know, but you get 10% off. And then for every dollar that you spend with Venom Life gear, they take 10% of your purchase and they donate it to the ASF, you know, in West Africa. So not only are you getting really cool apparel, repping, you know, the hobby and the culture that we love, you're also getting a hookup from THP and THN and, you know, the magazine stuff, but you're also helping people all over the world, majority in West Africa, but all over the world, treating the most neglected tropical disease in the world, snakebite. So I'm going to try and throw that message out there because, you know, Venom Life and the guys and gals.
That's our boys, man.
They're our boys. Yeah. So, but this show is proudly brought to you by
Puget Sound Pythons.
Puget Sound Pythons.
Jeff and Kendra. They're right there in the comments hanging out with us. I'm assuming it's Jeff. Might be Kendra. I like to kind of play the guessing game.
Might be both.
And by the end of the show, try and figure out who it is. Have a little guess. Yeah, so now there's talk of Cox and the leggings and
I love it.
Ryan Cox, not Cox and the leggings, as in like two objects.
A
giant person and the leggings. Yeah.
Yes, a giant rooster that happens to wear leggings.
Only a
Nice. So, what are we smoking tonight, Big Papa?
Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. Tricky Traca, or Mike Rita Tricky Traca. This is the 764. So this is a 7x64. I'm not a massive big green gauge guy, but these I've talked about. I've had these previously on another episode, at least once. And this size is actually really good. This blend works really well in this size. It's a long smoke. I'm going to try and take my time with it and not like make it last the entire show. We'll see how I do on that. But
I like it. Tonight, I got the Crown Heads. Las Calaveras.
Ooh, which year is that one?
This one is 2019.
Okay. Let me know how that is, because they've had a few in the past. So every year, for anybody that may not be in the loop as far as what's going on with that, Crown Heads releases Las Calaveras every year. Each year, it's a different blend. So it's basically a different cigar each year. Some years they've had in the past, they were absolutely outstanding. There's been a few years kind of off and on within the last 4 or 5 where they've been kind of underwhelming. I don't remember which ones were which. We had them previously in the shop, but it was maybe, I think we got them 1 year. We didn't get them the next year, and then we got them the year after that. So it's been kind of odd, but they're overall like Crown Head stuff. I'm pretty impressed with. I really like.
Yeah, I would agree. And I had whatever the excuse me. I don't know if it was the 4th or 5th year. I don't remember what year that was. But I had one, and I wasn't that impressed. And then somebody told me, like, "Oh, they change it up, man. You gotta just keep smoking them." I'm like, "Well, that's a sales gimmick, right?"
Oh yeah, it is kind of frustrating because you don't know what you're gonna get. You don't know if it's gonna be an absolute banger, if it's gonna be disappointing. So I know like I said, we did them for maybe 2 or 3 years and not repeat like consecutively. and I don't. There was one year where they really just they hit the shelves and they just sat there. They really didn't do all that well, but
Yeah.
a lot of that is because of the magazines and the blogs and the reviewers and stuff. I mean, unfortunately, yeah, it's completely subjective, but people are going to listen to the people that have those platforms.
Yeah, of course. And Jeff says that the V cut changed his life. And what's funny is I'm not a snob in necessarily the angle of my cut. Like there are some guys and gals that break out the friggin' bubble level. You know what I mean? I just kind of hold it and snip it. But excuse me. But that Colibri V cutter that you gave me has never failed me. But look at that cut.
It is
that
a
cut
ridiculously
is
great
flawless.
cutter. And when I saw those, when we first got them in, I was sure that would be a $60+ cutter. I was like, there's no way those things are any cheaper than $60. Like I refuse to believe that. They're $40. So very good deal. That's the cheapest cutter actually I think they offer.
And it's holding up well.
Dude, we sell a ton of them. I like them because size-wise, they're not huge. They don't take up a ton of space in your travel case. They are on the heavier side, which also isn't a bad thing because when you're cutting it, my issue with sort of the Zycar brand stuff is they're often very thin. They're a bit thinner than this, and so when you have bigger hands and you're holding it like this, sometimes it can feel a little like unbalanced, and it's just difficult to maneuver. And
I mean, I'll tell you, I've done it. I'm not bashful. I've held it, and when I pressed, I almost like snapped my fingers, and the thing fell on the floor. I shot it out of my hand. So the weight and the thickness of the frame of it is nice. I like it. But I'll be honest, the whole reason for me bringing it up was that Jeff brought it up, but the cut is perfect on this, and it's a year-old stick, so or 2 year and a half, 2 years old. So that is a testament to at least how they do their caps,
And I'm typically not that picky as far as my lighters and my cutters. I just want them to work and work consistently, and so that's the nice thing with these Colibris. The one that we originally had at the shop, I think our Oliva rep gave it to us for some reason, and that one was supposedly like 10 years old, and that thing still cut crazy sharp. So
nice.
That inspired us to start carrying Colibri instead of Zycar. Zycar used to have like this lifetime warranty on all their stuff where if anything happened to it, you sent it to them and they just replaced it.
Even like dulling the blade?
Yeah, I believe so. But then they changed ownership and that went away.
Oh.
So Zycar, a lot of people jump ship on Zycar. My one complaint with these V cutters, I will say, is the spring on these. Like if I drop this on the table right now or even just bang it, it opens up. Like the clasp on it doesn't hold very well. And that's really not that big of a deal. I don't carry this around in my pocket too much. And just so everyone knows, like the V cutter thing. So basically you put it in there and it cuts that channel like what you could see with Phil's. And there's really no
against the wall.
Yeah, there's no benefit to a V cutter over a straight cut or a punch. I like it because, like Phil was saying, you can cut it and you don't have to really think about it or worry about going too far. So great cutters, really happy with it. And then my lighter, we got these. What brand are these? I don't remember off the top of my head. It's some sort of generic brand, but we got these little triple flames. I really like this.
It's not Vertigo?
No, it's a. I know it. It's on the tip of my tongue. I can't.
This is the best lighter ever. Vertigo, triple flame. This is my second one because I destroyed the other one over the course of at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years. But this thing's in my pocket every single day, and it's just awesome.
Yeah, this one I really like. I like the ergonomics of this one. Like the tank's big, it's heavy, it's all metal construction. It's got a punch on the bottom. It's adjustable. It's got a nice window on it so I can see where it's at. And then it's triple flame, and it's got the spring action on it, which is nice because this rarely comes open. Even if it's in my pocket. There's no way for anything to get in there and open that up while it's in my my pocket, but this is a great little lighter. I think we sell them for $27.95, but I love the cylindrical aspect of it. Like, it's very ergonomic, if that makes sense. Like, it's very comfortable to hold, it's very comfortable to light with, and I'm kind of odd about that stuff too. But cutters, straight cutters that Calibri has, their straight cutters are on the thinner side, kind of like the sidecar stuff. But these, this thing's got some weight to it. The paint and stuff kind of chips off fairly easily. I won't even really say it's paint. It's more like this is like a rubber-ish coating stuff, and then you have paint like on the metal part there. That's gonna scratch and chip and all that stuff. But I kind of like it when it does that, because it kind of shows that it's been places, and I don't know, just personal preference.
I like it. TE in the house, everyone. Ladies.
Thomas Urban.
Try the veal, tip your waitress.
But anything exciting happened over the week?
All right, let me rewind. So, as many of you know, I fancy myself a small gecko guy. A little bit. Nothing crazy. I'm a snake-eyed heart. Hence this show, But I do like the geckos. And Chris Panshab is constantly talking about how much he loves Coleonyx. And I was blessed when I took my herp trip to Tucson 2 years ago, I found a wild Coleonyx. And I was kind of like, oh, wow, this is really cool, banded gecko, blah, blah, blah. It's cool. Play with it. Let it go. Take some pictures. And I was like, man, that species is really cool. And then Chris keeps talking about it. And he keeps talking about the Central Americans and how they're his favorite. Well, I now have 1.4 Central American banded geckos. And this is my first time with this is my second time with a South American or Central American species. So
I'll say pull up, because people may not be familiar with Coleonyx.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it is Chris Panshab that actually even sort of piqued my interest in them, because I knew about them before, but I did not realize how widespread they were out west in terms of just the number of species and stuff that we have in the States. Assuming you're going to pull it up.
Yeah, I'm getting the photos of my animals real quick.
Basically, these are like the U.S. leopard gecko.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, when you see the pictures, it'll make sense, but they're cool. I don't know what it is the last year or two that I'm really coming full circle and starting to really appreciate a lot of native species we have here that I kind of just overlooked before. I knew about them, but was like, yeah, that's cool. But now, knowing that these things are in our backyard, I have a better appreciation for them. And if I was going to do geckos again, it would be Stropurus, Knobtails, and probably some form of Coleonyx.
So there's several different species of Coleonyx. I can't remember off the top of my head how many. I want to say there's 12 or maybe 13 in total. Maybe more, maybe less. Don't quote me. This particular species is Coleonyx metratus, which is the Central American. My animals are actually Nicaraguan. They are wild caught, but they're not babies, but they're not adults. They're probably in between. They might be 6 months to a year old. They're fairly good sized. But they're just awesome geckos. During the day, they are super chill, like leopard gecko chill. At night, they are spastic as hell and super fast. And thank God they can't climb glass, because I would have my hands full. But so this is one of them. I just took that shot. I thought it was a good shot. I'm gonna flip through some crappier pictures.
How many, what did you end up with ratio wise? Do you know?
Yeah, I wound up getting hold on while I do this. I wound up getting 1.4. So, wow. I had the ability to be somewhat choosy in my specimens. And I went for the more banded animals, because that's my thing now, is banded stuff. These pictures, forgive me, these pictures are really crappy. They're cell phone pictures, but here, I'll throw these back up again. So that's one of the females.
Cox said, make your bed. You're not my mom.
What's funny is that picture of my bed is I wanted to make sure I knew when the specimen break was in terms of the pictures. So I would take a picture of the bed real quick and then go to the next gecko. So
those are so cool, man.
Super cool. And like these pictures just don't do it justice. The bands are so prominent and there's different phenotypes within the region. So I don't want to say that they're like island isolations, but the majority of them, they are banded, hence the name banded geckos. But the same shipment that came in from Nicaragua, a friend of mine, he picked through them and pulled out all like the speckled and mottled looking ones.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to try and focus on the banded stuff. He's going to focus on, the more crazy aberrant speckling. Well, let's go to the next photo. That's another female that's not in shed. That's how light that animal is.
Yeah.
Super pale. So I kind of got a mix of everything in terms of patterning. Again, forgive the cell phone photos, but those are my 4 females. So
I like how you have that really pale one, and then right next to that on the left is a really dark one.
Yeah, super dark. And like, can you guys see my mouse?
Yeah.
Okay, so you notice this one has like that V on its head, right? And it's still pale. This one has like this weird camouflage, like black camo in there.
Mm-hmm.
I like how the cream is coming up on the sides of this one, and it still has the V, but it's kind of broken up. Mm-hmm. This very much looks like some of the darker poplin carpets, which I like a lot. And then this one's head, this probably has the most pink. I mean, the deli cup doesn't do it justice, but this probably has the most pink on its head. But you can see that it's just a total, Rorschach test of nothing, just blotches and spatterings,
Well, then, and the brown in the bands and those is more prominent too.
That one. And then I have one picture of the male. Here's the male, and he's a little dusty because the container he was in was kind of dusty. But I thought he's the perfect stud because he has good bands. He still has some, some weird, blushing on the sides and stuff, and then he has that weird, crazy head pattern.
I love the way that those and the leopards have that sort of bluish hue between the eyes.
The eyeshadow.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like these geckos
work I've always loved about those. Right.
Right. And they're super soft, very, very small scaled, very reminiscent of Lyasis and like white lips and stuff like that. Very, very soft. And according to Chris, the Mitratas, they do this weird scorpion tail defense thing where they like make their tail fully erect and like kind of curve it up in the air like a scorpion. And I won't lie, I kind of was poking at the male trying to get him to do it, and he's just the most chill gecko ever. He just doesn't care. So it honestly, it feels like he's captive bred because he's just so, I'm cool, I'm chilling. Even at night, he just doesn't care. So I'm very, very excited to do these species. Very excited. So that's my highlight for the week.
Yeah, they're just, like I said, man, talking to Chris about them. Of course, you talk to Chris about anything, he's so freaking amped about it that it's hard not to, it's contagious. It's hard not to get excited about it too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Fishhead Diagnostics now has fecal exam kits, just so everyone knows.
Nice. And what is the fecal exam kit going to
be? So this is a post that Pia literally just tagged us in. She said, just like our nidovirus kits, they include all supplies needed to collect a fecal at home. We use a preservative to stabilize the feces for shipment to the lab. We are proud to have partnered with an amazing lab that is held to our high standards for limited time. Get a discounted shipment rate.
A shipment rate.
Yep.
I love it. So I'll repost that. That's nifty.
That's something like when it comes to that, I mean, yeah, you can have your local vet do it and they can probably identify what's going on or likely will. But when you have it more focused towards herps and stuff, that I think that's even if it ends up costing a little more, like that's probably worth the extra coin.
Sure.
Because, you know, if Pia and Dr. Susan vouch for that lab, then you know it's legit.
Absolutely. And, you know, fecal is so much better. Let me phrase that. Fecal is so much easier than doing mouth swabs, you know? Because
I didn't find the mouth swabs to be difficult. It's hard when it's just you. When you have another set of hands, that's
right.
It's one thing, but yeah.
Right. So we had a topic that we want to talk about tonight, right?
Do we want to get into the book thing that I was talking about first? Since that's kind of shorter.
It's up to you. I mean, it doesn't matter. Shorter, longer. I mean, we're here. You know, let's rock and roll.
So I finished, as of today, I finally finished that Venomous Bites from Non-Venomous Snakes that talks about management of colubrid bites that I'm sure you guys have seen me post about it. Let me find it. It has like 4 authors. So it's a great book. Easily one of the best herp books I've read. Granted, that is not a large pool, but man, there's so much good information. So Venomous Bites from Non-Venomous Snakes, a critical analysis of risk and management of colubrid snake bites. Great book. If you have any interest in that kind of stuff, be it, Boiga, Heterodon, any of the weird stuff, Thrassops, it talks about it a lot. Phylogyrus has talked about a lot. And it's interesting because the last bit talks about the issue with bite reports posted online.
Okay.
And it talked about it in terms that I really hadn't considered. And so we've all seen the posts in groups or Reddit or forums where people talk about, they got bit by their tricolor hog, their melanota, whatever. And the book talks about how, like, that's fine and all, but those cannot be medically accepted reports clinically. And they talk about why. And so basically what they were getting at is like, yeah, read these, but take them with a grain of salt. And so the reason that you would be doing that is because one of the major points was people like to conflate stories a little bit.
Okay.
It's not objective. So, you have the guy that talks about getting bit by the 4-foot melanota or whatever. And yeah, they may not be trying to church it up a little bit, but you also don't know that. The other main point was you don't know the medical history of that person. Like, they may have some comorbidities or something that even they may not know about. So that may have played a factor in why a bite that's normally not that serious was a little more severe. They talked about just not having background information. The identity of the snake and it being 100% verified.
Right.
And
that's a big deal.
Did they seek medical treatment? Did they not? What drugs did they take? Antihistamines or whatever. So it was really interesting to think about that. Like, I always enjoy reading bite reports, sting reports. Like, if you, there's that Venom forum. I don't remember what it is. I don't remember what it's called. I've been on it forever, but they had a section for bite reports and sting reports catered to tarantulas and scorpions. And so I always enjoyed reading that, but
it was just arthropoda?
There was like a snake section, but no one really posted on there. If I recall.
But like they didn't cover, marine stuff. They didn't cover insects. Right. Okay.
And then Matt asked, does the book say anything about a connection between snake bites and other allergies like bee stings? I don't remember it saying anything specifically about that.
And that's interesting. By the way, what's up, Scott? There's always been a correlation, and I don't know if this is just like the pet shop guy in my mind or not, but there's always been a correlation between, oh, are you allergic to bees? Because usually some kind of bee is on the panel for allergen tests, right? If you're allergic to bees, don't have a pet scorpion. Like if you're allergic to bees, don't have a pet emperor scorpion, which I can see the logic, but I wonder if there's any
kind of
fact
apples to oranges, because you're talking about
it's
like
completely different.
Bees, it's an apitoxin.
Right.
Like it's specific to bees. Whatever
Yeah.
scorpion you get stung by, be it heterometrus or centroroides or whatever, like that's going to be very different from a bee or a wasp or whatever, you know. But it did not specifically talk about that, but it does talk about mismanagement, like clinically, people that got bit by phylodryas that were given Bothrops serum.
Wow.
There was talk of sort of experimental things where people were trying blood transfusions and adding plasma with some bites. And it's funny because they also explained the term like mildly venomous, and considering something venomous is also not nearly as cut and dry as the whole rear fang thing to begin with.
Okay.
So they talk about how the definition of venomous kind of varies a lot, because yeah, you can have a rattlesnake, you know, which has a very serious toxin, and we know that. And then you can have a brown tree snake, you know, an irregularis, and those have reports of some decent neurotoxic effects, mostly in infants and small children. But when it comes to stuff like that, it's not necessarily like you can't really compare the two in a sense, because the venom for the boiga is completely prey specific.
Right.
Like it's meant. I mean, I think Fry put out the numbers that boiga toxin, when it came to lizards, was like 3,000 times more toxic to lizards than to us, and I guess other mammals.
Yeah. So
to say that, and I guess it kind of goes against what we constantly preach, you know, with rear fang stuff. I'm still not going to take the risk of getting bit by any of my cyanea. But basically saying like, yeah, they're venomous, but it's not venomous in the traditional sense of it's used for protection. It's meant for food procurement.
Right.
So I thought that was very interesting. They said, you know, I told you, I think last week, how they classified different snakes by hazard level, hazard level 1 through 4. And they basically said the rear fang snakes that you are like, that are up there with the big boys in terms of toxicity and likelihood of mortality, were your boom slangs, your twig snakes, and then the rhabdophis. It talked about rhabdophis toxins a lot. Like a ton of people got bit by tigernus, which I thought was really interesting, because that's
not one of the heavy hitters, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder the places where that would be located. I mean, is it a misidentification of the species itself, not even being rhabdophis?
Yeah, and there was actually a specific section on that, because there are, in that same range of rhabdophis, there are a few species that look very, very similar. And interestingly enough, these things are in the Natricine family, so similar to like your garter snakes, Neurodia, I believe, would still be in that group. But these things are legitimately toxic. Like these things cause some really interesting stuff. The book also talked about the use of stuff like heparin, the use of other drugs, and how they act with, you know, whether or not they're actually effective or not, if they're actually just making the problem worse. Talked about like acute kidney damage, long-term effects. You know, there were some people that got bit and it did so much damage to their kidneys that they eventually, you know, even after the bite, after a prolonged period, didn't survive, just because the damage had been done to their kidneys so much that they just could not come back.
Renal failure is a major thing with a lot of that cytotoxin. You may not have that bad of an adverse reaction from the cytotoxins itself, but your kidneys are doing their job to suck that crap out, whether it be, in excess levels of hemoglobin because of destruction, or just it trying to, be the filter that they are, and it just overloads. And I mean, you've scrolled through 4 or 5 pictures just in that one little clip you just scrolled, and 3 or 4 of the animals I saw in that 5 seconds could have been easily mistaken as bungarus,
Yeah, well, so there's like an Asian garter family where there's a handful of them that look very, very, very similar to a lot of these, to where even if I saw them, I wouldn't touch any of them, because it's, some of them are really hard to identify and separate.
And when you say garter, you're meaning more like Natrix, or are you meaning more like Elapsoida?
More like Thamnophis.
Oh, okay.
Because I mean, they have the same scalation, same general sort of garter-ishness, which it doesn't really surprise me that they'd be sort of in that family. I mean, that's a much broader separation. Obviously, the garter snakes we have here in the States are going to be completely different from garter snakes everywhere else, but they are still going to be kind of related. Yeah. And so they talked about how, like, this is subminiatus, so this is another species that also has caused some serious bites, not nearly as serious as the tigrinus, but they were talking about how the antivenom for tigrinus has been effective for these. They talked about how no one's really, like, antivenom for any of the rhabdophis is very hard to find because not a whole lot of people are doing anything with it. And bites are basically, they said the profit margins weren't high enough for companies to justify making antivenom for these things.
Right. Similar to Eastern coral snake.
Right. So I thought that was kind of funny, because it's like, of course, it's. And
did the book talk about poisoning at all, or no?
No. So
okay.
When Phil talks about that, I don't know if it's the subminiatus, if it's all rhabdophis.
I'm pretty sure it's almost all, if not all, rhabdophis.
There was actually just a picture of that. So these guys are the snakes that are technically poisonous and venomous. Let me see. There was a really good picture of it a second ago.
While you look for that, our resident Aussie Scott Eiper has been giving us some wonderful information. Going back to the arthropoda, talking about histamine responses not linked in arthropod venomations, which I find incredibly fascinating. He just trying to remember, saying that species like Boiga have the 3-finger toxin, which is very prey specific, but squamata not to rodenta. So, like, going back to what Justin was saying, the venom is catered to a more reptilian prey, and therefore would have a more adverse reaction to reptilian prey opposed to biting a mammal.
Which they also mentioned, that's not to say that if you did get bit by a large Boiga, a big Melanota, big Irregularis, like that would be a legitimate. There's a possibility for that to be a much more serious case medically. So this is a good picture. This shows the poison glands that rhabdophis have in the neck, like literally directly behind the head. And I believe that's similar to sort of how dart frogs get their toxin. These guys are big amphibian eaters, from what I understand, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
And so they've adopted that, and it's a poisonous and a venomous snake. So I think that was interesting.
And just for anyone who's curious, we keep saying rhabdophis. It's typically referred to as keelbacks. So most of the species that we're talking about, the common name is blah, blah, blah keelback. Whether it be rainbow keelback or the blue-naped keelback, which is probably my favorite. That's Rhabdophis rhodomelus. I'm actually trying to.
Oh yeah, those things are cool. I'll find
a picture of them. You looking?
Yeah.
Okay. So there you go.
These things are.
Yeah, those things are super duper awesome. I've actually been asking some people around for them, because that, of all the Rhabdophis, that would probably be my top hitter. And apparently, I'm not alone, and they're quite rare in the pet world.
I think it's there's one that's like all green with black. I think that's the maybe. There's one that's really cool looking. It ain't this one though. I mean, this one is cool looking, but the other one was neater.
It almost looks like
it's like Asian night adders. Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's really, really strange. So
Scott's saying that there was a serious. Scott's saying there's a serious case in Guam where a very large, quote unquote, irregularis almost killed a young child. There have been a few anaphylactic responses there in Australia as well. So despite it being relatively mild in humans, the anaphylaxis kicked some ass.
Yeah, and that the book talked about it talked about irregularis specifically multiple times, and it talks about how irregularis in their range, they see more severe effects with small children than they do healthy adults. But they also found, and this is if I completely read it correctly, because I've talked about it before, how it's a pretty technical book. It's kind of a drier book. There's a lot of medical terminology and stuff, but it talked about how irregularis venom, when they're young, is much more neurotoxic. And then as they get older, with the ontogenetic shift in sort of like habitat and diet, I would assume, that it actually loses some of that neurotoxicity, and it guess it becomes more specific to larger prey. So they talked about that being kind of an issue where smaller snakes would somehow, small children would either get a hold of them or get bit while they're sleeping, and the higher neurotoxicity would cause more issues. So I thought that was interesting.
That's very interesting. And I know a lot of people get curious where, we speak about small children. That could be anything from a newborn infant to, say, 8 years old, maybe even 10 years old. But people wonder, well, like, do these snakes sneak into the house and go in the baby's crib? And it's like, no, that's not what we're usually talking about. The odds of that happening are very, very slim. It's usually a child that's of walking age and happens to wander off from mom for 2 seconds and sees a snake and picks it up and whap. That's how he or she gets tagged. So the odds of irregularis sneaking into your bedroom at night and coiling up with your newborn are quite slim in often cases.
Unless you're on Guam.
Yeah, unless you're in Guam.
So I don't know. It was a great read. It's just, there was a ton of information. It talks about sort of the difference between rear fang colubrids and your standard front fang venomous, be it elapids or crotalids or anything like that. So basically, those are considered sort of a high pressure delivery, and then with the rear fang stuff, that's considered sort of a low pressure delivery. So they, front fang stuff obviously has the hypodermic needle effect with the fangs. With the rear fang stuff, I kind of consider it, the way I sort of interpreted it and understand it, and once again, Scott can correct me, is I look at rear fang stuff as like a sponge with what the hell are those things called that are in the caves that hang from the ceiling? The stalactites. Yeah, you're muted. So
yes,
think of it like that. So you have, like, basically the point is that they bite, chew sometimes they don't. The book talks about how that is not necessarily necessary to have envenomation happen, but basically it's a lower pressure system, so that gland, it gets squeezed, and then that venom just sort of drips, like runs down that tooth. Most have some sort of a canal in the dentition to assist that, if you will. Yeah, but it's not the high pressure system that you have with rattlesnakes and elapids and stuff, where it is a forceful sort of jet through the fang into the the vein or the skin. So it was really interesting just to hear how it all works. It's a great book. I highly recommend it.
I should know this. I don't know why I don't. Maybe I'm just having a brain fart. But for example, Actroctaspis, where does that fall into play?
Those were considered front fang.
Okay, so they were still considered high pressure.
Yes. So they had those lumped in with elapids and crotalids.
Okay.
It's an awesome book. I highly recommend it. If you can get your hands on a copy, definitely do.
Is it still in print?
I don't believe it is.
And do you know what the publication date is of yours?
This is 2011, I think.
Okay.
It's not an old book. It's not a new book. Everything in it should be very much still relevant and accurate, but
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, bite reports are fun to read, but take them with a grain of salt, because there's just a lot of factors where you don't have the objectivity that you do with clinical reports.
Yeah.
And I actually learned a lot of medical terminology too, because like as I'm reading it, I'm like, I've never heard of that, so I'm Googling as I'm reading and learning things, and talks about, like I said, the transfusion of blood and like what do you do when you have, no coagulation happening in the blood, like with your teletornus and dyspholytis stuff, and
right.
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Scott said the capillary attraction with limited muscular constriction into a wound. That's accurate. Evolution in progress. I hear it's being revised currently. So, but I also talked about, I think, an episode or two ago about how that term rear fanged is just so vague because the dentition across all these different groups varies so wildly, just from the size of those rear fangs to the groove. Like some of those groups don't even have a groove.
Right.
Some have a groove that goes almost the length of the tooth. They talk about garter snakes. So Matt asked, what category does American garter snakes fall into? So that was one of the ones where they were kind of like, to say they're venomous is a bit of a stretch. And it's one of those things where so many people don't have reactions to those bites that every now and then you get the one person that posts on Facebook the ridiculous amount of swelling. And so they basically said to say that they are venomous in the traditional sense is kind of a stretch, similar to what I was talking about with some of the other stuff where they're specialized feeders. And so that system is catered to that prey. It's prey specific. They basically, yeah. Daniel says phylodries have some pretty decent sized rear fangs, which, yeah, phylodries are talked a lot. Baroni isn't really talked about much. It's mostly the other species of phylodries that we really don't see in the hobby a whole lot. But in Brazil, there is a species that bites people. There have been a pretty good amount of documented bites, and some of them were serious, not necessarily life-threatening, but and it's Phylodrius olfersi. So there's been a rumor about this species and someone dying from a bite. They talked about that in particular, and they said they don't have any actual evidence that the person actually died from that bite. It could have been something completely different, like some sort of comorbidity or something. So they said, yeah, they're venomous. Yeah, they can do some damage, but to say that they've killed someone, no one can say for sure because they don't know what the actual cause of death was and how long after the bite did that actually happen. So that one was kind of up in the air, but they're pretty innocuous looking. That one's big.
Yeah, I was just going through Actroctaspis micro rabbit hole and just looking at, I went looking for fang related stuff and I stumbled across taxonomy issues, which is the bane of my existence, talking about how, you can't just consider Colubridae or Colubridae a wastebasket taxon anymore. And now they're breaking everything down. So like Actroctaspis is technically not even colubrid anymore. So, which is probably for the better, but whatever. I digress.
But it gave the very last maybe 10 pages or so, it gave some specific examples of some of these online bite reports and then gave their comments as to why like where the gray areas are, where the questionable areas are. It talked about a Western hognose bite, it talked about a big melanota bite. And so it was like, here's what happened, but here's where the holes are, and here's why we didn't include this in the book. Like on the serious level of talking about cases, because there are a lot of case reports in there, which I thought was interesting because I love reading that stuff. But they talked about like that heterodon bite and that melanota bite, and they were going off some of the text in those posts, and like just a lot of gray areas. Like we don't know if this person has like alcoholism, drug addiction, diabetes, heart disease, like things that would make a difference in the outcome of whatever happened, and that would gauge the severity of those bites. So it's awesome to see them sort of they talk about it, like they show you the case report, and then they give their comments and sort of their breakdown of why this might be questionable.
I like it. I got to get my hands on it, man.
And I got to find one. Thomas asked, now, how could we as a hobby better classify the nitty-gritty of the different flavors of rear fang venomous? Does a system already exist in the scientific community? And
yes and no.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always going to be of the opinion, if it's rear fanged, probably don't want to get bit by it. And yeah, that book has sort of... Oh, well, if we're talking about in terms of like taxonomy classification, yes, opisthoglyphs are what they would be called. But like Scott was saying, we just need Scott in here all the time.
Well, our shows get more and more venomous by the week, which I love, but that's why. God bless him.
I think what Thomas is saying, like in the hobby, as far as like severity,
right.
And that was one of the sections in the book. They put they had a little sort of op-ed piece towards the back that said opisthoglyphs in the private sector, and basically the authors were like, we're all for people keeping venomous, but with species like Teletornis, where there is no antivenom,
right,
those should be left to like private facilities like zoos and stuff, just because of the level of risk. But at the same time, that's not a group that we see kept in captivity really all that often. It's pretty rare. Boom slangs, they have an antivenom. What else? There was actually... So they talked about the use, like what we've kind of already known about bites, of getting antivenom early, even if it's only an ampule or two. Right. Makes a huge difference. Things that can change the outcome of some of these, because when we're talking about serious stuff like the twig snakes and boom slangs, like you're basically doing a ton of damage control for a lot of like zero coagulation of the blood. It thins out, platelet counts drop and whatnot. And they actually go into detail about the platelet count thing, and it's just, I could go on about it all night, and I'm having a terrible time explaining it. It makes complete sense in my head, but
you're doing an all right job. Yeah. You're doing an all right job.
Highly recommend it. I'm sure you can find it on eBay.
Yeah, it's an awesome book, and it's difficult because when we talk about opisthoglyphs, like we know what we're talking about, but a lot of people don't. And just to summarize for those trying to catch up, right? And I'm not trying to talk down to anyone. I'm just trying to do like a micro layman's recap. You've got a lot of snakes that have the ability to produce a venom, whether it be in minute quantities or in large quantities. And there are some of those snakes that their delivery system is crappy, for lack of a better word, and therefore does not give adverse reactions when humans are envenomated. And then you have other ones where it's really nasty and it will mess you up real quick and you will die. So when we talk about opisthoglyphs, we're talking about those animals where the old terminology was rear fang. Obviously, we've learned a lot, and it's not just a fang in the rear. They don't have to just chew on you, and so on and so forth. And that's the synopsis of what we're discussing.
Like I said, it is not a light read, but Damn it, man! I don't know that there's a book herp-wise that I've read that I was more fascinated by and was just glued to than this one. I mean, it was just so much information. It talked about like the PSI of bites, like the pressure
Really?
of that venom and how it's coming out. And I want to say the book said the average was about 30 PSI with crotolid bites.
Interesting.
I'll have to look that up, but
interesting. I actually, it's funny you mentioned that because most of the elapids, I'm pretty sure, are also, because I mean, I don't know a lot about it, but I know most of the elapids are at about 30. I think it's like 28 to 36 PSI. And it's funny because most of the stuff in the animal world that is shot or spat is around that same speed.
really,
Yeah, and it has to do with muscle contraction. So,
well, then Matt says, if my brother gets bit by a horsefly, his whole hand will swell up like crazy, but I don't think anybody would classify a horsefly as venomous. And yeah, you're not wrong, but that sort of falls in that same category as like prey specific, because there is some sort of, I saw a video yesterday actually about mosquitoes and how those work. I thought it was pretty interesting, but they have they anesthetize that region before they bite into it. And then I believe they have something that's like a weak anticoagulant to help get
right.
that blood out of the, out of that capillary.
Right. And that's not, and I wouldn't even consider that a venom because you're not talking about, well, I mean, I guess you could in terms of like digestive enzymes and so on and so forth. I guess maybe. Who knows? Way above our pay grade.
Yeah. And that's just what the whole book was kind of saying is like venomous in terms of this group of animals is kind of a vague term because obviously you have extremes where you have boom slings and then you have things like garter snakes, explaining how like, yeah, you can say they are, but medically and clinically, we don't really consider them that because if it's like mild local effects, you kind of get that from any bite from, a large python. You're going to get some swelling, you're going to get some redness, you might itch, so it talks about that a lot, but it also interestingly talks about tetanus. Because I think some people are under the impression that you can't get tetanus from snake bite, but it has actually been recorded that you can. It's just very rare. It's not common.
That's all those snakes that lick rusty metal before they bite you. Yes.
Well, I was unaware. It's a bacteria, and that bacteria has a what they described as basically a toxin, like a neurotoxic sort of property that causes your muscles to spasm out, and that's why you get lockjaw because those toxins like lock up those muscles.
Very interesting.
I don't know. This is like the Rear Fang Venomous book for dummies version, what I'm telling you. So you'll just have to get the book and read it yourself for it all to make sense.
It's awesome.
I can't explain it.
Yeah, man. I think it's super interesting. Super duper interesting.
Yeah, I love that stuff, man. Like case reports, I could read those all day. I find that stuff fascinating.
Oh yeah. And you've read the that classic one on the boom slang from the PhD, right?
Yeah.
And dude, like you feel his pain of having to describe everything, but at the same time, you have to commend him and respect him because he kept it scientific to a T. And he noted everything. Yeah. Sad but breathtaking.
I almost positive they didn't have boom sling anti-venom at that point, so he was kind of screwed regardless.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he was one of the only Westerners to admit
the first one to document it, because I think before they thought, like just like with Teletornus, they thought they were harmless. They were like, yeah, these things are no big deal. And then someone got bit and bled out of every hole in their body, and they were like, wait a second.
Which is crazy because if you and I went into the bush and just started playing with boom slangs, we'd get messed up. How many other people did it in the past and nothing happened.
And I think I may have mentioned it in an episode or two ago, but it talks about boom slings in particular as well, and how bites with those are interesting because they can open their mouths considerably wider than a lot of snakes. I want to say it was like 170 degrees.
Yeah.
And so bites and envenomations are a little easier from them just because they have such a wide gape.
Yeah. So and like I've getting a lot of import boom slangs back in the day, we'd throw a live hopper in there and see if that worked. And if it worked, it was quick and easy transition to frozen thawed, you know? And you kind of feel bad because you watch that mouth open so wide and just whap, and then you see the effects, and it's so rapid. Mm-hmm. It's legit scary, but amazing at the same time, you know? Awesome species.
Yeah. You know, they talked about the difference in some of these toxins, like the prey-specific ones, you know, the ones that are catered for lizards and injecting them into mice, and seeing how it doesn't have much of an effect on mammals, but you put it in a gecko or something, and those things are dead and almost instantly. So it's very interesting. So grab it. There was a really cool one of those, the bite reports that they didn't include in the official ones, but ones they sort of commented on and talked about was actually from a Thrasops. Apparently someone got bit by like a 14-inch, which is considered a small one, I guess. Maybe it wasn't even 14. It might have even been smaller than that. But the bite was significant, and the person basically commented, you know, if this was a larger individual, I probably would have gone to the hospital. So.
And you said that was Thrasops?
Yeah, Jacksoni.
Yeah. Again, awesome species, and way misunderstood in a lot of ways.
But you know what I've been doing lately? Switching gears.
Yeah.
So I usually go to my parents' house on Sunday to hang out with them and whatnot, and let them hang out with the grandkids. And there's some tin and stuff back behind their house. Behind
there
the
is.
Chicken coop that my dad used to have chickens in that has been vacant for some time now. And so now every Sunday or Monday mornings when I'm over there cleaning out my mice, topping everybody off on food and whatnot, there's a couple of boards, there's some tin. I go and flip those now, and I finally found some stuff actually, which before, the reason I never really went herping out at where my parents live, and they have, you know, they're surrounded by woods. It's a very rural sort of part of the county. And so you would think there would be snakes everywhere. But in the past, when I went as a kid, I very rarely found anything. And so after a while, I kind of just stopped herping. But within the last couple of weeks, I've found a couple of black racers, which those are stupid common, so those weren't too much of a surprise. But did find a copperhead, which is cool. I found another crown snake, which I thought was awesome.
Oh yeah.
And so it's kind of like giving me a little motivation to kind of get out there more and do some looking around, and even just walking around the woods. You know, I missed it a lot, and it's one of the things that we were going to talk about last week but didn't get to because we were so involved with books. It was just like how good that kind of stuff can be just for even just mental health. Even if you don't find anything, you know, you're out in the woods, you're not on Facebook, you're not on the internet, you're outdoors in nature,
just breathing it in. Yeah. I make a mission of it. If I had unlimited gas and unlimited mileage on my car, I would go herping every day. You know? And
you need to go herp the Francis Marion Thomas. That would be awesome.
And I try to make it a mission to at least, at a minimum, go road cruising in the middle of nowhere at least twice a month. Because if I don't, I know I'm not gonna feel right. You know, we live in such bustling lives, and you know, some of the people listening to this may live in a more rural environment, some in a more urban environment, and it really doesn't matter, because even if you live in the most rural of areas, you're not always off just chilling looking for herps. You know, it's you're working on, whether it be agricultural or livestock or any kind of blue collar career, whatever it may be. It's good to just get out of the norm and experience nature. You know, that's why we love what we love.
It's just a nice little walkabout, you know.
Legit. And
but it's got me itching to go out more, you know, when I'm actually finding stuff. And maybe that's why historically for me, I've never been big on actually like seriously herping And it's like I said, mostly because I never really found anything. But then I have people who are like, they live for it, and every day they're off, they're out in the, and out somewhere looking for stuff.
Yeah.
And they find stuff. Like I see people on Instagram all the time. They're out in Texas, they're somewhere up the coast from me, like in the Charleston area, and they're posting the pictures of the 10 snakes they found within 2 hours of being in a random field somewhere, and it's corns and copperheads and king snakes and Erodia, and it's like, man, like now I get the appeal, and I understand why it's so popular, but for me, I never really find anything. And so especially when it's hot during the summer,
yeah,
kind of miserable to go out there when it's stupid hot and you got gnats in your eyes. And so I've never been big on it, but I'm itching more to go road cruise with Bratz and his secret spot now, just because I've been finding some stuff. So
that's good, man. And like I find that the research, the pregame, if you will, of herping, whether it be talking to friends, mutual acquaintances, learning the spots, looking at the topography of the land that you're, checking out, that's kind of cool in itself too. And there's several apps that they're not just topographical apps. They're not just a map app. You're not going to find, good herping spots on Waze per se, but like, for example, there's a map app that's for hunters called On X, like on, X, the letter X. And it's a paid app. You have to pay an annual fee. But what it does is it actually shows you property boundaries and easements. And it also shows you easement access. So let's say there's a parcel of land that's owned by the state, but the access to it is behind, the easy access to it is behind a agricultural property. Excuse me. Well, if you don't have a means to talk to the farmer to get access to his property to access the other one, this map will show you different ways to go about it.
Urban says super useful for not getting shot at.
Yeah, exactly. That's very true. But I mean, and like I said, it's designed for hunters to know where state land is, management land is, federal land is. But it also tells you, if you click the parcel of land, like let's say there's a bunch of woods, right? And it's right there, and you don't want to be that guy or gal trespassing. If you click the section, it'll tell you who owns that property, and you can contact them. And I've done that copious amounts of times where I'll call up the company, and it's some holding company that just happened to buy a parcel of land that's 10 acres. And I'll say, hey, I wanted to go on this property and do some wildlife photography. Can I get permission? Do you need me to sign a waiver or something? They're like, no, man, there's nothing there. Have fun. Don't break your leg. Other times they may not be so accommodating, but at least there are ways to go about it. Don't feel trapped because you're stuck only going to that one boardwalk on the side of a community. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's another thing that's kind of deterred me from it, I guess, a little more, is because when I was a kid, so there's a house like a lot over from my parents' place, and it used to be owned by this guy that he still does, he just doesn't live there anymore, but it's one of the biggest landscaping companies in the county. And it was a massive plot that he had. Like, it had his house and stuff on it, but he also had like barns where they would hold like equipment and whatnot. And so I remember as a kid, I'd go and ask him, hey, can I look around for snakes? And he always said no. And I can almost guarantee you, it was from the liability standpoint of, I have a ton of money, and if this kid gets hurt, I'm going to be shelling out a lot of that.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it's that's the other thing, is like seeing that, the trespassing, no trespassing signs, not knowing who to contact. That's always deterred me, because I don't want to be that guy, especially if someone actually lives on that property and you don't know it because you can't see their house through the trees or whatever. I don't want to get shot at. You've talked about that with the chameleons and the sulcata stuff, that situation,
Oh yeah.
Down south, that's a very real possibility.
Yeah.
So,
and then for example, I had a teacher in high school where
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, have a good night, Matt. I had a teacher in high school that loved doing wildlife photography in Florida. He was born and raised in Florida, and he remembers when I was in high school, he remembers when before my high school was there, and it was the end of civilization, and they slowly just bulldozed more and more and more and more and more to make room for humans. And he would tell stories of crazy animals that he found, aberrant scarlet snakes and stuff that you just don't see anymore because we've taken so much land. But one of the stories he tells is how he was driving down the road and saw a dirt road with no signs, no cattle fences, no nothing, but there was a nice strip of orange trees. And in Florida, we're known for our oranges, as most of you well know. And a lot of times through bird germination and irrigation and just, orange trees sprout up all over the place. So he assumed this was probably some vacant cattle lot and a bunch of trees just happened to pop up. So he says, you know what? I'm going to walk over there from my car, excuse me, and I'm going to just take some pictures of the orange blossoms because they're gorgeous. And he said he was in that field for about 15, 20 minutes before 5 guys on ATVs with rifles drove up on him, held him at gunpoint and said, "Who do you work for? Why are you here?" And they worked for one of the major orange juice production companies that shall remain nameless. And they thought that he was there to sabotage their crops. So like when Thomas says that Onyx is awesome, it's super useful for not getting shot at, in a lot of cases, he's very correct.
What does it cost a year? Like, what's the annual fee?
Oh, I don't remember. I got to renew mine. I haven't used it in a couple months, but I think Thomas, it wasn't much.
Thomas,
it wasn't much. It was like $30 for the year.
That's not bad.
Yeah, which is, I'm pretty sure it was like, if you just want the map app, it was like $6.99 or something. But if you wanted it with all like the parcel names and the phone numbers and, all that, it was like $35, something like that. Yeah, Thomas concurs, about $30. So, but again, you don't have to have a fancy app and start, hopping fence lines, so to speak. There's a lot of public land. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize is that, part of the Parks and Recs Act, back when Roosevelt was president, when Theodore Roosevelt was president, there's a couple of those Roosevelts, it was making sure that every person that lived in the United States had access to the wonderful wilderness that is our country. And that's where you have sportsman's tax, so on and so forth. So every single one of you guys watching and listening technically owns a piece of U.S. land. You just need to learn how you can access it, whether it be buying a hunting license and a management stamp through your state, or buying a management access tag for the weekend or the day, or even if it's just you want to use that recreational campsite. For a lot of places have recreational campsites where the license is free. You just have to apply for it so that it's fair to everyone else and you don't get squatters and stuff like that. But we all own public land. And you'll see a lot of hunters, they wear shirts that says public landowner. Well, it's true because we all own a piece of it and we have the ability and the right to use it, So take the time to look where your public access is, look where your public land is, and see, is bird watching allowed, is kayaking allowed, is fishing allowed, and go about it the right way. And if it means you have to take a hunter safety course, if that means you have to get a hunting license, whether you want to shoot Bambi or not, at least go through those steps. So
they're usually not that expensive either.
Yeah, I think for Florida, it's $26 for the year. And I get access to, I think, over 500 parcels of land. And when I mean parcel of land, I'm not talking about like 5 acres here, 10 acres there. I think 3 Lakes, WMA, is like 56,000 acres.
God.
Now, granted, I can't remove any reptiles from the land because it is state property.
Mm-hmm.
But I can take photos. I can pick stuff up and hold it.
Enjoy it. Yeah.
Enjoy it, right. So think outside the box a little bit, do a little homework, and don't feel subjected to just walking down the block and finding a bunch of bushes and seeing if there's a garter snake in it.
Yeah. It's just, like I said, for me, I don't have that spot where I know if I go there, I'm going to at least see something, even if it's something as simple as a crown snake or, Storaria. I don't have that spot where I know for sure, like there's a very good chance I'm going to come across something. Like Jake has his secret spot where he goes out road cruising, which is a very good spot. The one time we went, I think we just saw a red-bellied water. I think that was it. But, everyone's got like their spot that they like to go to, and I don't have a spot. And it sucks. And it doesn't make sense because my parents live out in what's kind of the middle of nowhere. You've been there. You've seen it. there should be snakes everywhere out there.
Yeah.
And I very rarely find any. I see there's a lot of yellow rats. And of course, there's a lot of black racers. And I think the black racers might have a pretty heavy hand in why there aren't a lot of other snakes there, because the black racers are probably eating everything in existence.
Right.
And I mean, those are cool too. But after you see them constantly, you kind of get a little jaded to them, and you're kind of like, yeah, another black racer, cool. Water quality, that's a good question. I don't. There's a couple of swampy areas back there. That's another thing. I've never seen it. There's turtles and frogs everywhere, but I've never really seen any serious numbers of Nerodia. I found more Nerodia in their pool skimmer box than I found out around those little water like swamps.
Yeah. It also comes down to time of day and what species you're going to encounter. You know, so like I know that if I want to see cottonmouths, my best chance to see that is about 30 minutes before the sun goes down.
Mm-hmm.
Water snakes, I would say, you know, Nerodia species, I would say would be about 30 to 45 minutes after the sun goes down. Corn snakes, even a little later after that. So it's also learning if you have a species that you're specifically searching for, like a choice specimen or a choice species for the evening or the day, learn, you know, from asking friends or just trial and error, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, we talked about that, you know, just between us, like scarlet king snakes. Like I wish I could find scarlet king snakes, because they are probably my favorite king snake species we have here native to the state. Granted, it's just them and eastern kings, but scarlets are cool. I feel like they were kind of just thrown into that genus kind of by default, because there wasn't really anywhere else to put it, because they're nothing like the easterns. But I've always been told, check the bark of pine trees and pine tree stumps, like down pine trees. I couldn't tell you how many down pine trees I've completely like raked and never found one.
Yeah.
I don't know what gives. And I guess with a species that small, I was thinking about it today, actually. With a species that small, I'd imagine you kind of have to be in a little pocket population of them to probably find them, because I can't imagine those are going to travel very far from sort of their little area. So maybe it's just being in the right place where they're known to be found. I don't know, but it sucks, because that's one species I always want to find and never do. And coral snakes, you know, we have a good bit of them here. I haven't seen one in a long time, a live one.
Right. I've never seen one.
But that's one species. Like that's always, every year, if I do go out, that's the species I'm wanting to find, is a coral, just because
it's funny.
Them in person.
You also think too, is just you talking about like pulling bark off of a tree, you know. Down by me, we have cabbage palms, right? For those of you who don't know, it's a short, more bushy palm tree, and the bark it peels off almost like an artichoke, right? How it has like plates that peel off.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll go up to a cabbage palm, and we'll search the base of it, because as you very well know, Justin, in the Southeast, we have invasive fire ants, and fire ants are everywhere. If there's fire ants, there's not going to be anything else. There's not going to be lizards. There's not going to be snakes. There's really not even going to be too many bugs, because those fire ants, they kill and eat everything.
Yeah.
But I'll check and see if there's fire ants. If there's not fire ants, I'll peel back those plates, or those bark panels, and you'll find baby corn snakes, baby yellow rat snakes, you know, maybe an actual scarlet snake, not scarlet king, but a scarlet snake.
Yeah. Scarlet snakes are pretty common too. I've had a lot of people text me pictures of them asking if it's a coral.
Yeah. And I think that just learning, like the whole thing I was saying about checking for fire ants, you know, look and see if there's irrigation runoff. If you're herping an area and there's nothing there, look and see if there's a pipe coming out of the ground, because the farmer from, you know, a quarter mile down the road, he may be dumping his irrigation, which has fertilizer in it, and it's not apt to, you know, house animals in that area. Who knows? But I just going back to what Cox was saying, I have a photo for Ryan Cox, if you don't mind sharing that real quick. For those of you who enjoyed my minute lecture on public land access and use, There is a professional hunter and television personality named Steve Ranella, who
Tom
is
York from Radiohead.
Yeah, right. Tom York from Radiohead. It's called Steve Ranella. He has a show on Netflix called Meat Eater. I have nothing to do with him. I met him at a trade show once. Like, he's awesome, but he's a legit conservationist. And check out the show on Netflix, and you'll learn a lot about public land access and public land use. And the same way that these guys are, hopping from mountain to mountain looking for elk, we can do the same thing looking for corn snakes. It's just learning how to go about it the right way. So that one's for you, Cox.
So here's, see if I can find a solid picture of it. I really want to set up a drift fence, which it would take a little bit of time on a day off to set up, but I feel like that's like the best way to find stuff. And so basically you set up some of this tarp. Some people, it looks like, use tin. But the idea is you have this fence here, critters hit this fence and follow it and eventually fall into a bucket. And so this one looks like it just has one on the end. I've seen some where they have them every several feet. They'll put like a brick or something in there, so in case it rains, they can actually, whatever gets stuck in there can actually get out of the water and not drown. But this would be a blast to set up and just see what you find, see what salamanders and stuff you come across, what snakes. I want to say, so Tony Mills, who I used to work for with the Low Country Institute, I want to say he found like a marsh rat in one, which marsh rats are gigantic. But here's another good example where they have them on each side. This is actually Francis Marion University. Francis Marion is up in the Charleston area. It's a really awesome national park or state park. So this would just be something to do at my parents' house. Like, this would be awesome to see what I come across.
Oh yeah. And just for the record, for people that are going to watch this and learn from this, be very mindful, because when you set up a trap like this, it must be monitored multiple times.
Yeah, you have to check it constantly.
And we do mean multiple times a day. So even if it's just like morning, noon, and night, you got to check it, because animals will fall in, they'll get caught. And if it's a hot day, they can't evade the sun, they get dehydrated, it could be catastrophic for a lot of species. So make sure that if you are doing something like this, that you're checking it as frequently as humanly possible.
And it wouldn't even have to necessarily be anything crazy long. Like, I feel like you could just do one that's 15, 20 feet in a certain area and just, around that tin that's laying down.
Yeah.
Just see what you find,
Yeah. And it's also cool because it's not a permanent installation either.
Covered up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like a white-tailed deer can jump over it. A raccoon would have no problem walking around it or even just plowing through it. So,
right, and that's the point, is to like catch smaller stuff. Obviously, you're not trying to catch raccoons and possums and coyotes and all that stuff. You're looking for salamanders, snakes, lizards. That's mostly what you'll probably end up finding. Spiders, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
So I've been wanting to set up one of these at my parents' place for a while now. I just haven't done it. I'd actually, the little lot next door to the house here, I bet you I've seen a surprising number of snake species, like diversity wise, just within the year or two that we've been here. I've seen a lot of DOAs, like a couple of garter snakes, a decent sized copperhead. I think a worm snake at one point, which is interesting because I haven't seen one of those in a very long time.
That's cool.
I don't think I've ever actually found one here. I remember when I was in Boy Scouts as a kid up in Virginia, I found one on a playground when we were at some sort of event. But yeah, I've seen a ton of DOR stuff. There's a ton of legless lizards up here in my little neighborhood. I think last year, just out walking the dog, I saw one a day for a week or two. So yeah, Thomas said set up a trail cam on it. That would be cool too, I guess.
Yeah, it's also about positioning trail cams appropriately. Don't put a trail cam on the middle of a tree and expect to get, snakes underneath the tree. Like, be mindful of that. So, but yeah, I think between having the gumption to just go and just get out there and see nature, and even if that means starting at your local park, where they have, the cliche pond with the fountain and the old lady feeding the ducks, like those cliche parks, I found plenty of stuff there, whether it be salamanders or toads or, anoles or whatever. So
I'm not even a big salamander guy, but I love marbles. Like finding marbles is awesome because they're such a gorgeous species.
Yeah.
I
mean, anything really. Like, I know we've joked about this before, and it's like, oh, look, another ball python. But like, it's different from seeing a redback salamander or a marble salamander in a pet shop, and you're seeing it in the wild.
Yeah, I think I love corn snakes. I love finding wild corn snakes. I love those more than the ones that you see at Daytona on the tables.
Oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've found stuff that I've seen 100 times, and it's still awesome. And then if you bring someone with you, like for example, my cousins, they live near me, and I love to take them out there, and it doesn't matter what we find, they're not used to seeing it. So even if I've seen a, Nerodia floridania 1,000 times, it's still cool to them. And then I feed off of that too, because I got to show them that,
Mm-hmm.
And that's awesome.
Aside from corals, like what's one species that you've only found maybe once or twice that you wish you found more of, or you look for intentionally?
Obviously Everglades rats. That's like the current crusade. I actually went out last night and I hit this one road that was one of my quintessential Everglades rat spots. And I remember, I was just recapping this last night. I remember finding like a 5-foot male just sprawled out across the road. And it was blood red, almost as red as the neon sign in our background. And I know I might not see that ever again, So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't keep that animal because it was a big old male. Let him be in the wild. Let him keep breeding, doing his thing. But
he's beat Darwinism, man.
Yeah, exactly. He beat all the odds.
He's made it.
Yeah, and it wasn't like I was in a natural area or a public land or whatever. I was driving on access roads for cane fields, so those roads are traversed a lot by big, giant, heavy trucks. Full of agricultural goods. We're talking multiple ton trucks, and he evaded all those trucks all these years. So I left him be, but just finding that stuff, even if it's the ugliest one you've ever seen, it just makes it all worthwhile. It makes the gas worthwhile. It makes the money, the miles, the time. It makes it all worthwhile. Another one is the Brooks King. I know Justin hates Brooks Kings, but I've never seen one in the wild, and I've been going like crazy to this one spot all the way down the tip of Florida, and I can't find one to save my life. So I got to be doing something wrong. So,
what sucks is I was cleaning mice this morning, and I looked down. That giant metal shelving unit that's in there that has my grow out bins.
Yeah.
Under that, in like a corner by a post, there was a small yellow rat that was kind of curled up. I thought it was odd that it was just sitting there like it hadn't moved, because usually after a few minutes of you being in there, whether you noticed them or not, they start moving. And so I couldn't reach down there nimbly, and so I got my hook and pulled it out, and it was like degloved on like the last third of the body.
From you pulling it out?
No. Something must have got to it. I don't know if it was a cat. I don't know if it was a raccoon. I don't know if it was something else. But I could tell he was kind of on his way out because he was really non-responsive and really weak. And
yeah,
I was like, well, that sucks. It's probably maybe a year old, maybe 2, but it was just odd because I went to go pull it out. I couldn't see the tail. So I was like, oh, cool, yellow rat. I almost always during the year see at least one in there because obviously they think it's a free, it's a friggin' buffet.
Oh yeah.
Little do they know they can't access any of them, but
right.
I pulled it out and I was like, what the hell, man? So I carried him over to the wood line and kind of put him in a bush over there, and I don't know if he didn't look like he was going to make it. It was pretty extensive damage, so
you never know, man. You may find a 4-foot yellow rat a couple years from now with a messed up, scaled up, scarred up tail.
Yeah, I doubt it, but who knows?
Have you found anything significant from Mount Ratmore?
I haven't.
Really?
Which surprises me because I've seen because I had some frozen. I had some like Amazon tree boas and a couple of chondros that had died from whatever. And so I put them in that pile to kind of decompose. I like to give stuff sort of back to nature, sort of my take on that.
Sure.
Just put them in the garbage. I like to let them be a benefit to something.
Right.
And I could tell a raccoon or something had been digging in there because there were some holes in those areas where they had been buried. But Mount Ratmore, for anybody who doesn't know, is all those pine or pine shavings that I use for the mice. When I change them out, they go into a giant pile on the lot across from my parents' place. And it's getting pretty big. And so we call it Mount Ratmore. And you would expect it smelling so much like rodents that there would be something hanging out there on a regular basis expecting a meal to walk by. But I've yet to find anything on it. I've yet to see anything. It's really strange because I know P and Cody, they have a huge one at their place because they have all their rats and stuff. And they've talked about how on a couple occasions, they see some rat snakes and stuff kind of hanging out near it. But
have you thought about putting a piece of tin on it?
No, but that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, because the thing about this is we're imagining that said yellow rat snake or corn snake is going to slither through those shavings, but it's not.
I don't even expect that. I just expect them to be sitting near it.
Yeah, but there's no cover. You know what I mean?
No, that's a good idea though. I may do that in the morning.
Yeah, if you put a piece of tin on the one side that gets, say, the most amount of sun, right? Not only is that heat going to be trapped under there and help decompose a lot of that stuff, but it's also going to give them the shade to evade predation.
Mm-hmm.
The big Sasquatch predation.
Yeah.
So.
Well, aside from, for me, scarlet king snakes, I have found one pine snake in my life.
Really? I've never found one.
So that main drag out going to my parents' place, that main paved road.
Yeah.
Me and my dad were driving one day, and this was, I don't know how long ago this was. It was years. I mean, like, we're talking probably 15. We were driving, and there was a snake across the road, and I knew immediately that it was a Pituovis. And it was like right in the middle of the road. And so I saw it. My dad saw it like a millisecond after I did, and he, straddled it, went over it. And we got out, and it was a really nice pine. And every time I'm driving in that section, I think about it, but I've never seen another one. It wasn't a baby. It wasn't a huge adult. But it just kills me because, I would think that means there's got to be some out there. If one's there, the likelihood of it being an escaped pet or something is slim.
Yeah, and who in that area would have one as a pet and you not know them? You know what I mean? It's a small town,
Yeah,
that reminds me.
I've never seen any, but apparently they're out there. I've never seen a rattlesnake out there.
Really?
Yeah.
That reminds me of. I was going to tell you one story about pine snakes, but that story is nowhere near as cool as the one I'm about to tell you. So, I was. Forgive the helicopters in the distance. I was road cruising, or I was attempting to road cruise with a friend. We were going out to this one spot on the west coast of Florida, and can you hear that helicopter or no?
A little bit.
Okay. So we're driving, and the way that the highway goes, this one smaller highway, it cuts through the actual panther preserve. There is a big, giant preserve in South Florida on the southwest corner of the peninsula that is the majority of the Florida panthers in the wild. and there's lots of breaks in the fence line, right? So that the panthers can go wherever they want to go. But where there is fence line is the high traffic areas. These fences are 12 or 13 feet high with barbed wire on top of it. And the idea is the panther's not going to jump that high and cross it, and humans can't climb over it because of the barbed wire. They don't want people messing around in their poachers, whatever. Well, there's this one access road that's pavement, and it's always locked, it's always gated, and it's a helipad so that, if Trauma Hawk has to land or if Fish and Wildlife has to land or whatever, they got easy access. They're not taking up road space in the highway. And I remember driving by, and out of the corner of my eye, there was a diamondback stretched out across that little road. So that road is probably 12 or 13 feet wide. And there was maybe a foot or two in front of the snake and a foot or two behind the snake. Massive. Probably the biggest eastern diamondback I've ever seen in my life. But I couldn't walk over to it because of that fence. And part of me was like, damn, like this is a once in a lifetime thing. But the other part of me was like, good for that snake. Because think about how many other people would have seen that and either taken it out of the wild or killed it for no reason because they assumed they were doing humans a service to some degree. But like that's just like your Pituophis, it's one of those once in a lifetime sightings,
And there's a couple places here where there's like very healthy eastern diamondback populations. One of them is Parris Island, which is one of the Marine Corps recruiting depots. So obviously that's kind of out of the realm of possibilities to go and out and looking around. I always wish I could find a canebrake or something. Even pygmies I'd be stoked about, but I never see. I honestly don't know. I've seen pictures posted by a local page that is like, all about local businesses and restaurants, and sometimes people send them pictures of like some eastern diamondbacks, and I know they're on the island I live in, but I feel like they're in really low numbers.
Yeah, I can imagine that. It would be cool if someone was focusing on it, the barrier island species, and try and maybe, increase those numbers to some degree. I think that'd be an awesome project. The barrier island species are so few and far between these days, and I think it's 50% human development because we do love our barrier islands, but I think the other 50% is there's so many small, and I mean small islands that nobody even realizes because they're really not even on the map, and how many small pocket populations are jumping from rock to rock to rock or what have you. There's rumored to be an island in the Keys. I can't remember what the hell they called it. It had some funny name, like Bob's Island or something. But if you look on the map, it's not there. Any map you find, that island is not there.
Doesn't exist.
But if you go on Google Earth, it's there. And it's maybe 2 acres, an acre and a half. But apparently the only thing that lives on that island are silver eastern diamondbacks and shorebirds. That's it. And I've been trying to find someone who has a boat and is willing to take my ass out there. And that's the other thing too, is it's so off the beaten path in terms of like waterways and canals and stuff like that. Like it's not like, oh, we're on Key Largo. Look, there's a little island right there. No. It's like off in the cut. And no one goes there because why would they? There's no reason to go there, but they're supposed to be literal silver eastern diamondbacks. So it's interesting, And then there was that one eastern indigo that was found in Sanibel Captiva. Did I ever tell you that story?
I don't think so.
So the islands of Sanibel and Captiva, which is over by Naples, Florida, on the Gulf Coast, there's a couple smaller islands that are all linked together, right? And it's a tourist spot. It's beautiful shell stone beaches, calm, very little waves because it's the Gulf. A lot of retirement communities. It's a nice area. Well, a resort opens up on the beach, and the resort has their grand opening. And I guess the day after their grand opening, one of the guests freaks out and says, "There's a giant black snake on the beach. There's a giant black snake on the beach." So the Sanibel Island Captiva research facility, where they have a bunch of marine mammals and shorebirds and stuff like that. They do a lot of research. They go and they find it, and they find a 6-foot eastern indigo snake just chilling on the beach. And when they went there, it had happened to go up on like the pool deck and was like slithering in between like the pool tables and stuff, because it's not used to having a resort on its island, you know? So they found that one indigo, and that sparked a human curiosity. And I'm pretty sure they're up to 9 or 10 adult animals on the island that they found and, you know, cataloged. And it just goes to show you that those barrier islands, man, they hold some secrets, they hold some gems.
So up in Aiken, if you're going towards like Augusta and towards Georgia, but you go through South Carolina and then cut over, there's this place called the Savannah River Site.
Right.
And it's a couple miles where like there's a bunch of signs that say do not stop, no photography, no nothing. It's a nuclear reservation. And every time I drive through there, man, like it's just prime real estate for stuff. Like,
oh yeah.
If I could get out and look around there, dude, it would be awesome. But
well, you gotta formulate a proposal, and you gotta gain access.
Not gonna happen.
Never say never, my friend.
Like they have signs and stuff, and I think if you do stop, they have some way of monitoring, and people come out, just kind of like with the Orange Grove and that guy.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about trespassing. I would never. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about use your abilities that you have and propose that you'd like to gain access to the property and formulate a way that is appealing to whatever it is and go for it. You'll never know if you don't try.
When I was driving back from Augusta a couple weekends ago, there was a few spots that I actually wanted to stop. There's like where they had cut some trees down and stuff. So there was a bunch of, you know, fallen logs and whatnot. And I
roadside timber
been like cleared out a little bit. Yeah. And so I was really tempted to stop and look around, but I didn't have a field hook or anything heavy enough to handle that kind of stuff. But fortunately, I will soon, because I ordered a field hook finally after years of telling myself I need one. Our boys at Venom Life Gear and Get Hooked should be sending me one hopefully within the next couple days.
Hell yeah. Yeah. So which hooks did you wind up getting?
So I got one of the Palamas hooks, the Mike Clarkson
excellent
signature model. I got that in I believe the 32 inch, because you and I were talking about that, and that's actually something we should touch on a little bit as well. Because
sure.
I'm partial to shorter hooks.
Right.
I don't like crazy long hooks. Like the field hook, that's one thing because you're using that to sort of as an extension to reach and move stuff.
Right.
But when it comes to like actual hooks, I tend to gravitate towards shorter ones just because I feel like I have more control. It's not as clunky, if that makes any sense.
Sure, absolutely.
And so I asked you what your opinion was on sort of the ideal hook length for stuff if you're out and about, and you said never go under 30 inches.
Right. That's my personal opinion.
Elaborate.
So, all right. So, assuming we're not predominantly working with something that is potentially dangerous, i.e. venomous, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we're dealing with a baby animal, a neonate animal, you have a neonatal hook, right? Very thin, you know, aluminum, graphite, whatever it may be. You're not going to bring that in the field. You're not.
Well, I will say I ordered one of those smaller Viper hooks to keep in my car in the event that I do come across something smaller and don't want to have to get the massive, you know, the full size.
Sure. And that's something that I cover with a lot of venomous husbandry stuff. And that's learning how to use a big hook with a smaller specimen. Because I don't like carrying little hooks out in the field because I feel like I'm going to lose it. I know myself. I'm going to lose it. It's small. It's light. You know, even though they're brightly colored, I'm going to lose the friggin' thing. So for me, I will never go below a 30 typically. The Phil series or Wolf series or whatever the hell we're going to call the one I had Woody make for me. That one I believe is 32, including the grip and handle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall. Woody will probably
Dartha Lapis.
The Dartha Lapis model. I love it. So my love of the 30 inch came from working with bigger elapids, because I am short and I have a short wingspan. My arm is short. And I found that if I have let's say I have a 7-foot snouted cobra, right? That's a big animal. It's literally taller than I am.
By a lot.
By a lot. And I'm obviously tailing the animal. I need to have my weight ratios balanced appropriately. And I can't do that with a 40 or a 50-inch hook because I'm stretching myself out too far and I can't distribute the weight evenly. So what winds up happening is, if we break the snake into thirds, right? The first third, the middle, and the third, which would be, say, a few inches to maybe a foot in front of the vent. If I break it down into thirds, the tail is essentially the pivot point in my left hand because I am right-handed, right? And now I'm balancing either just in front of the cloaca or at the cloaca in my hand, in my left hand. And then the break between the first third and the second third is on the hook head itself, right? Whether it be on the foot of the hook or in the actual loop. And I'm balancing this point, right? I'm essentially using my left hand as a second hook, right? The longer the hook is, the least amount of distance I can have between the 2 points. So I would rather have a shorter hook with more body of snake drooped in the middle and be more comfortable and be better balanced than stretching myself out with a big old 45 or 50-inch hook. And that's because I'm short, because my arm isn't that long and I'm low center of gravity.
Well, maybe that's why I like shorter hooks, because I do have longer arms. So I don't know. For me, it's like a dexterity thing. Like, I don't mind longer hooks, but if you're dealing with something slightly heavier bodied, it kind of, like I said, it gets a little clunky. It gets a little, you kind of lose some of the fine motor, I won't say motor function, but you know what I mean.
Right.
You don't have the same dexterity. And I find myself, even when I'm doing stuff with like the Jansenii or the Cyanea, when I'm moving them around, that I have one of those Viper Series hooks from Get Hooked. I think it's 18 inches. I could be wrong. Maybe.
I think it's 18, yeah.
And that works well for those. Sometimes I don't have that immediately within reaching, and I have some shorter ones that are, I don't know, probably less than 16 inches. And I for some reason, I find it easier to work with like those Jansenii with a slightly shorter hook. And I don't know, it's just always sort of been the one that like I said, I sort of just gravitate to.
Yeah. And like with those Jansenii, I mean, were they 5 foot?
The female's probably somewhere between 4 and 5. The male's a little smaller, but
so like, for example, those Jansenii, I got the travel series because I wanted to test it out. I wanted to see what the hype was about. And dude, that is the one hook I use the most in my room because it's so well balanced. The grip is perfect.
And that's the 28 inch.
I think it is the 28. Yeah.
Okay, because that's what the Palamas hook was by default, was the 28, but you could go longer, and so that's why when I asked you, 28 seemed slightly short for me.
Actually, it's a 30. I'm just looking at the website right now. It's a 30. But like I would use that travel hook on those Jansenii, and I know that the whole point is to keep distance from the head of the animal, but I know that I could comfortably have my elbows bent, almost perpendicular with my body, and be able to cradle those Jansenii perfect with that shorter hook. Even though I don't have any resistance against my forearm, because the hook is shorter, because I'm able to balance the snake and break it into those thirds appropriately, I don't have as much weight and strain on the hook for where I would need to balance it on my forearm. So like that's perfect. Now, don't get me wrong. If I've got a 5 foot Eastern Diamondback, or I've got a 5 foot Gaboon Viper or something, and I need to make distance with the snake between me and the snake, I'm totally going to a 40 inch. You know what I mean? Because that snake is going to whip around and do a 360 on me so fast that I need to have distance. I also like a 40 inch so that I can push stuff away. You know, we always talk about using a hook like a shepherd's crook and, directing the animal, and that's you can't do that with a 30. You can't. You're putting yourself in harm's way. So, there is no one hook for everything. We have multiple hooks for a reason, but in terms of an all-purpose hook, I like the 30 because I can do a lot with it, you know? And don't get me wrong, I've even taken the hook and spun around. I've held the foot of the hook and just like pushed a snake back with the rubber end of it because it gave me that much little extra. You know what I mean? You just got to play with it.
Yeah. The 32 seems like a happy medium. I have a Midwest hook in my car. I don't remember how long it is. I need to look. And even that feels slightly longer than kind of what I'd go for now. Let me see if I can figure out what length it is. But I'm so glad I finally got a field hook, man.
Yeah, man, you're going to have a lot of fun with it. You are.
Just for years, I'm like, I need to get a field hook. I need to get a field hook. And I have yet to do so.
Now you have.
I don't know. I could just measure the one I have and know, but I don't know. But I'm excited. I'm still trying to decide. So I have my Midwest hook in my car. I'll have the field hook in my car. I'll have the Viper Series hook in my car. That Palamas hook, I mean, that was made like Mike did a ton of R&D literally across the world with different versions of that hook to see which one was the one that worked best for him.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to save it for my room and use it for the Jansen eye instead of the smaller hook and like have something that's made for larger snakes.
Yeah, right.
But at the same time, it's like it's for the field, you know?
Sure. And then and the Palamas is in the 30?
32.
32, sorry.
I believe.
Now, your field hook, to the best of my knowledge, there isn't a field hook on the website, is there?
No, there's not. So they do make them. For whatever reason, they just don't have them on the website. So it's not like it's like a secret or anything like that. I think you just have to contact Woody or Brent about it.
Sure.
And they do make them and they do sell them. They have them at shows. They're not on the website. I don't know why.
Do you know the composition of the field hook?
I know it has. So it's got those notches in the actual foot.
And it's an L foot.
Yeah.
Cool. And then it's still an aluminum shaft, and you know if it's 40, 45.
No idea. I texted Woody and said I put in an order, but I need a field hook added to that, and he said, "Cool, you know, send me X amount of dollars." And
okay,
I don't know what I'm getting, but
yeah, man, I have Matt and Jamie bought me a Ziegel field hook, and that field hook is probably the best field hook I've ever used. Now I haven't tried one of Woody and Brent's, but that Ziegel, man, I have lifted stuff that's hundreds of pounds. Like.
Well, that's what they're made for. They're made like to be able to. I mean, they call them log rippers for a reason. You know, it's like it's meant to.
Yep.
To grab stuff and.
Yeah, and talking to you about like L hook stuff. A lot of South Africa, they love their L hooks because most of their stuff is thinner bodied, longer snakes. And it's learning how to keep the hook head at an appropriate angle when compared to your body so that you don't, there's not a need for the U. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And that was one of the things, like one of the original models that Mike had when he was, you know, testing out the Palamas hook was it had a very tight V on it. Right. It wasn't an L, but it wasn't a U. It was a much tighter. It was more like that,
right? Rather
than, you know, I can't do it with my fingers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I asked him about that because that was something I was very interested in. He's like, it's great for smaller, wiry snakes, but you're kind of limited to that with that style, which makes sense because obviously if you have something like that, doing, you know, a larger Eastern Diamondback or whatever, you know, big Nerodia, like it's going to be a little wonky.
And like we were just talking about, whether it's a big giant green Nerodia that's full of babies, or it's a big old Diamondback, it's also positioning the foot of the hook so that you're covering more surface area of the animal, and you're not putting a stress point on one or two individual segments of vertebrae.
Right.
Just to go back to some of the comments real quick, you know, Dustin was kind enough to answer. Johnny Barrett says, "Can you take a hook on an airplane? I'm planning a camping trip soon, and I'm not sure if I should try and bring it with me." I would say 110% bring it with you if you can stow it on the plane in some regard. Hang on one second.
Venom Get Hook does do like I think the travel size is the 28, if I'm not mistaken. Like to be able to fit it in a standard bag. Let me see. I'm looking on the website right now, but
So I've never brought a snake hook on a plane. I know people that have bought travel golf club luggage, and they've packed all their snake hooks in like those hard shell tubes that are meant to travel with your golf clubs, or like put a golf bag inside it. They work really well for snake hooks of all different sizes. Me personally, it's a little more expensive, but it's completely worth it. I ship my equipment to wherever I'm going. So, this my Arizona trip a few years back, I was staying with a friend. Whether you're at a friend's house or you're, in a hotel or whatever, I will get a long cardboard box and a bunch of packing material, and I will I'll overnight my hooks to wherever I'm staying or where my destination start is, whether it be a friend's house or hotel or what have you. If it's a hotel, you just, pick it up at the concierge desk or whatever. And it may cost more because the shipping's expensive, but I don't have to travel with it. I don't have to worry about them getting lost. I can insure them. You can't insure your luggage on an airplane. If it gets lost, it's lost. If somebody walks off the little carousel, they say, "Oh, look, golf clubs," and they steal them. You're not getting.
They're going to be disappointed.
That's it. They're gone forever.
I can't sell this shit.
Yeah, right. So, what are these friggin' poles? So, I always ship stuff overnight. So, if I'm flying out on a Sunday, I will ship it out Saturday for Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening delivery. And that way, when I land, it's there waiting for me.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm leaving, you can ship it out the same day that you're flying out because you're going home. Who cares? You're going to beat it there, and that's always worked really well for me. I also like the ability that I could pack other stuff that I wouldn't be able to bring on a plane, whether it be fire making material or knives or any kind of camping equipment that is kind of bulky or cumbersome. It may add weight to the package, but let's say you want to bring an extra backpack and you want to roll that backpack up and stuff it in there. Or if you have some electronic devices, whether it be solar panels or water purification or whatever, you can just ship all that with the hooks, overnight it, and there it is.
Making sure people remember 10% off. If you use the code THP at checkout.
Hell yeah.
What is your thought on that center grip? Like, I know some of those Midwest hooks have that foam center grip.
There's all right. I'll just speak freely. I hate that center grip. I have seen a lot of people get in a lot of bad situations because of that foam center grip. You have a snake. So? You have a snake that is faster than you think, and it loves to climb that hook. And at one point, it was on a nice smooth texture that it had barely any traction. And all of a sudden, it hits that grip, and it's like a springboard. You just gave it that much more traction to get closer to you. They also tend to fall apart a lot more. They're usually like a dense foam, not rubber, and they tend to peel and flake, and they kind of disintegrate in your hand.
I can see that.
I like the idea of having the ability to hold the hook closer to the head, almost choking up on it, if you will. However, it's so much more cumbersome. And if I'm working with a specimen small enough that I can get that much closer, I would wholeheartedly prefer a different hook. So, like, for example, I have the Pro Series from Midwest, the titanium one.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, up until the Darth Alapis hook, that was my favorite hook, man. That hook was so cool. It is stupid light. Yes, it has the foam handle in the middle. I cut it off. I took a set of paper scissors and I just went and ripped it off. The only problem with a hook like that is that if it gets dinged in any way, I don't know if it has something to do with the titanium that's in it, but if it gets dinged or it flexes in any way, the next time you go to do that same thing, it snaps. So And I don't know if that has to do with it being a titanium hook, or if it has to do like harmonics wise, or if it has to do with it being the length that it is, because it's very long. It's a 52-inch hook. It's too long, man. It's too long of a hook. And I feel like if you have a hook long enough to merit that foam in the middle, it's probably too long of a hook.
Yeah.
I know I kind of answered that question backwards.
I can see that.
Yeah. So I'm not a fan of the grip in the middle. Have I used a hook by holding it in the middle? Absolutely. Should I have used a smaller hook? Absolutely. You work with what you have at the time, though. So some people may like it, and somebody who's using it on a big, agitated retic or something like that, that's sure, go for it. You know what I mean? I'm dealing with cobras and big rattlesnakes and stuff like that. I don't want that foam in the middle. So,
how do you feel about tongs?
Excuse me. I love them and I hate them. So
that's kind of how I feel about them.
Yeah.
Like, they're great and all, but then when it comes to actually having to use them on something, especially something that's fast,
yeah,
I feel like there's more of a risk that you're just going to end up fucking that snake up rather than actually capturing it.
Yeah. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but everyone knows about the gentle giants from Midwest. Yeah. Those are great unless you have a tiny snake or a thin snake. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was because of Dr. David Williams doing his canny research in Port Moresby on Poplin taipans that they made the M1 tongs, which are half the head size of the gentle giants. So it goes from being this wide to like that
yeah
wide. More pilstrum in size and shape. So I bought those specifically because I deal with a lot of thinner, more high-speed stuff in the past. And I jokingly would call them, it's my Cobra got behind the couch tongs. No, I have never had a Cobra get behind my couch. But to me, they're the Alamo. If you've encountered a situation where you can't get this animal on a hook, you've exhausted your resources, maybe you're stressed, maybe you're by yourself, maybe the thing has gone into like your rack system, or it's gone under a piece of furniture and you're just having a hard time, that's your Alamo. You can safely grab that animal, drag it out, and start from scratch. You still need to learn how to use them. You can't just grab a snake with them because there's a high chance that you're going to break a rib, crack a vertebrae, or pinch the crap out of that snake.
Mm-hmm.
Every single snake that gets grabbed by anything is going to lose its mind. And it's going to go, if it wasn't already at 50 or 60 miles an hour, it's already at 100 by the time you've grabbed that animal. So in the field with like rattlesnakes and stuff, I think it's great for someone who is inexperienced because they put themselves safe in a safe distance. They're safely picking the animal up, placing it in a receptacle or moving it across the street or whatever. That's fine. And you can train yourself how to not squeeze so hard. But with those M1s, the gentle giants, it makes it a lot easier because it makes it very difficult to crush that animal.
Yeah, it's the wider surface area and it's got the rubber to keep, the creates the drag.
And pilstroms, I think pilstroms are fantastic, but they're snake killers.
Yeah, and it's funny because we were talking about how I was flipping tin, and I had those pilstroms because I was tired of having to use my hook to flip, 8-foot pieces of tin, and so I just got those. I have a pair of pilstroms that my parents got me for Christmas when I was like 13.
Sure.
And so I had them, and I flipped a black racer, and I was like, I want to grab them, but it's kind of hard to gauge, especially with the cheap ones, because these weren't like super expensive. These weren't like Midwest brand. This was just like the Pakistani eBay kind of deal.
Sure. The flea market pilstroms.
Yeah, and so it's kind of hard to gauge exactly how much pressure you're putting on that animal, and I just I flipped that racer, and I was gonna go grab it, and then I was like, I knew I didn't trust myself with it,
Sure.
It was great for flipping stuff and getting a good grip on something to turn it over, but
right.
Other than that, I was like, I don't want to use this on an animal.
So if you look at the original patent for Pilstrom tongs, you can see that they may not have had the snake in mind, but they knew exactly what they were doing because If used correctly, pilstroms won't hurt the animal. The problem is it is so easy to use them wrong, to use them incorrectly. And by what I'm saying is that if, let me see if I can get the original patent drawing, because the patent drawing is beautiful. I'm pretty sure I had it saved at one point. So Pilstrom tongs, for those of you who are unaware, Pilstroms were the first patented snake tongs. And they have a alligator mouth to it, you know, almost like a trap, you know. I had it in my favorites. Where is it? And the goal was to be able to pinch the snake, almost like scissors, lift it up, move it, do whatever, and even close on the snake enough for the snake to turn its head back and then be able to throat it with the tongs.
Mm-hmm.
And then be able to grab by the head. And I know a lot of third world or developing world areas, they do that trick when they want to, you know, grab by on the head. I don't like it because it's a real easy way to break a snake's neck.
Yeah. Which does not take a lot.
Yeah. Pilstrom tongs. So, patent drawing. Oh, excellent. Here we go.
Every time I use mine, I'm using it and I'm saying I wish this was just a hook. I find hooks so much more easy to use. I feel much more confident with that. You know, I don't have to worry about hurting anything.
Sure.
The Pilstroms are heavy. Like they're not. I prefer hooks.
Right. So when we talk about using Pilstroms appropriately, so you can see back here, you guys can see my mouse?
Mm-hmm.
So back here I have a pistol grip with essentially a trigger, a palm trigger. And, you know, I'm going to squeeze that with my fingers and press it inward. And by doing so, there's a series of cables and springs that go down the shaft of the tongs. And then the bottom jaw here doesn't move. The top jaw recesses back down and it closes, you know, like an alligator. If you were to get the snake in this area here, there's a very, very low probability of damage to the animal. However, if you're a centimeter or two back to here, or like right around here, you can kill that snake. You can snap that snake's neck. You can break its back and cause serious, serious damage. And most of the time, people do that unknowingly. They didn't mean to do it, but they did. Now, let's look at the stop the screen share. Let me pull up the Gentle Giants. Midwest, and you can see the vast difference.
Daniel Lopez, who's one of the interns at RPI, said Stony L hooks all the way. I've actually heard a lot of really good things about his hooks. I like that he has those polycarbonate hook ends instead of the metal, which I know Jake has talked about liking more because you don't have the reaction of the cold metal or hot metal if it's been in your car, you know?
Right.
But that's another one that, I mean, I don't know if that's something I'd use in the field. Like inside, that's perfect. But
so here we see the Gentle Giants. The head is very, very wide. It distributes the pressure evenly across the snake's body.
Mm-hmm. More surface area.
Right. You can still pinch the animal in this little notch here, but the idea of this one is to do the opposite of the Pilstroms. I want to put more of the animal in here on the plate, but I still want to avoid that hinge point, you know, because there is that spring and there's a lot of pinch factor that's in there. Now, if we simply go to, and we do this, we look at the M1s. So going back to that story with Dr. David Williams, you know, he's catching all these Papuan taipans in rubbish on the side of the road, and the Gentle Giants, they just don't fit in the rubbish. Mm-hmm. So Midwest slimmed these down, and again, it could have been a myth story. I don't know where I heard that, but they slimmed them down. They made it for more high-speed stuff, more thin-bodied stuff. This is what I own. These things work like $1 million, but these are literally my Alamo. I'm out of resources. I've exhausted myself. Maybe I'm getting frustrated, whatever. I'm not going to use these unless I absolutely freaking have to. Now, because they are so long, I like them a lot because I'll use them as a second hook in terms of double hooking. So I can gently, and I do mean gently, grab the snake, slide it towards myself, lift it up, get a gap between the snake and the ground, slide my primary hook through. Now I can release the M1s. I can pick that snake up on a single hook while keeping the back third still on the ground, shimmy the M1s underneath it, and use that V cutout, that alligator mouth V, as a second hook. But now I have to shift my hand from the actual pistol grip to holding the shaft in front of the grip. So it is versatile. It is usable. It's a technique that I've shown people before. Is it for beginners? Probably not. But if
I like that they have that stop too. So where like if you're holding it, it has that little notch that sticks out that helps with some leverage and.
Sure, absolutely. And I put my between my ring finger and my middle finger. I've put the trigger in between there to kind of give me a little more leverage when I'm holding the actual head of the pistol grip. But again, if you're just getting into this, or maybe you're curious about snakes, but you're not apt to using a hook, and you want to just move them from the front yard to the tree line behind your property, this thing works like $1,000,000. I can't recommend it enough. But it is my last resort. It's my Alamo. And the next episode of Venomous Etiquette videos, I'm going to go over a lot of tools. It's taken me a long time because I'm trying to revamp stuff and trying to piece more clips together and show more product and more tools and stuff. But this will definitely be covered in the next episode.
Sometime in the next 6 months when we actually get it.
Yeah, I know. Adobe Premiere is kicking my ass. So
you are struggling.
Yeah. But I'm glad you got some Venom Life gear, man. It's awesome.
I mean, I now have like 10 hooks. So
yeah. Now
I've got the very first one I bought is still at my parents' house. Actually, I need to go. My dad was using it for some of the crazy ass Eastern Kings he had.
Oh, nice. I was gonna say, my favorite thing to do with Pilstrom tongs is removing water bowls.
Yeah.
Because the hook on the front of the Pilstrom, providing the bowl isn't too tall, I can slide the bottom jaw under the water bowl, squeeze the trigger, that front hook grabs under the lip of the water bowl, and I can pick the whole water bowl up and out and change the water bowl, clean the water bowl without actually removing the animal. So I do enjoy them a lot for that. I mean, I know that's not their intended purpose, but just another tip.
Or you could be a real man and just reach in and grab it.
Yeah. I got some snakes that they ain't playing that. I actually, right before we were doing this, I was doing some cage maintenance and such, and my Nubian was fired up, so I managed to get some quick shots of him. Forgive the poor quality of photo.
I won't.
But that's the noobs.
Look at that angry bastard.
Yeah. This was literally as I was trying to use those Pilstroms to take that water bowl out, and he was just like, "Why are you in my cage? Why do you hate me?" So I got a couple shots of him fired up. Just not a happy camper. I love the 2 dots.
Yeah.
It goes back to that whole, butterflies having the 2 dots and turtles having the 2 dots, and But he's a grumpy.
I had to separate the Jansen eye earlier to feed him, and it took me about 10 minutes to get the male out of there because they're constantly like, as soon as you touch them with the hook, they move, and they go to some other opposite corner of the cage, and then they were in the giant cork log that I have in there, the cork round. And they were both on top of each other, crammed in there because they knew I was in there trying to do something with them. And it was, I wish I had filmed it. It was almost comical. It's like I'd finally get him out of the cork tube and he'd go out and around, but then I would the female would start kind of coming out the other side, and so I'd have to stop her. And then he's gone into the other end of the cork tube and gone back inside, and I was just like chasing him around. It was
nice. It's like Benny Hill.
Yeah.
The Benny Hill music playing in the background.
Yeah.
I can't wait to come back up to your house and show you how to use that hook with them Jansen eye.
Which hook? The Palomas hook?
Any hook, because clearly you're Benny Hill struggling.
No, I have so much stuff in there. Like I have it packed out with branches and fake plants and ground and
all right.
So like there's plenty of spaces for them to get away from me where it's funny, like they're quiet as hell. Like when they move and they move fast, normally you would think you would hear some sort of like rustling with the fake plants and stuff. You don't hear any of that. And so like, I remember one day, not that long ago, I think I was separating them again, or I was doing something. I was cleaning the female's cage, replacing something, and like I was looking for her and trying to pull her out, and I'm like, man, where the hell is she? And then I look over, and she's like in the corner, ready to go, and I had like no idea. And so I look over, and she's just sitting there, like you doing the long tongue flick, slowly moving forward. And I was like, shit, they're agile.
I love it.
It's really no surprise that they're often found in trees and stuff, because I'm sure they just glide through it, man.
Oh yeah, like Bruce Lee.
Yep.
Super cool.
So update on the Cyanea.
Yes, please.
I ended up with a total of 6.
Nice.
I had one egg. It was an 8-egg clutch. One egg went bad pretty early on. And then I had one baby that was dead in the egg full term for whatever reason.
That sucks.
And then the other 6 of them came out over the course of like 3 days.
Cool.
So all look really healthy.
Those were the ones that you cut, and then you said you touched them just to make sure that they're good?
Yeah. So like I did it with chondros too. So if you cut eggs, I'm thinking the next clutch, I'm not going to cut them. I'm just going to leave them and see. It's just the thing. Like the thing with Boiga is the eggshell is just so thick, and obviously they've adapted to figure out a way to get out of that. Because if it was so thick that they couldn't get out, they'd be extinct. But I know, like my first clutch, I had a lot that were dead. It was a 9-egg clutch. I only ended up with 3 babies. A handful, like 3 or 4 of those died full term in the egg. I had a couple that died after they'd come out. But when you open them, like if you take like the cuticle scissors and you just very gently touch the body, like they flinch, like they respond.
Sure.
And so you can tell when one's dead in the egg because it's like rubbery. You know, they don't like A, there's no movement, but B, it's very firm.
Sure.
So this time I cut them all, checked them, made sure I cut it enough to where when they do decide to come out, like they have access to air. Because I think, that some of that, they pop out, some of them will, and then they go back in the egg, and then for whatever reason, they just suffocate in the albumin, and they don't find their way back to that hole.
Yeah.
So all 6 look really healthy. This time I'm waiting to attempt to feed after they shed. Last time I tried it beforehand, I got no response. So this time it's like, I'll just wait until first sheds, then I'll offer up some food.
Cool.
See where we're at there. And I didn't do water bowls immediately with this one either, because I had the last clutch that drowned. And they come out really small. I use for a 6-quart tub, a fairly large water bowl. And so I figure it's just better to wait to put in a water bowl with those 2 and just keep misting them regularly. Keep them nice and damp for that first week or 2.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens.
Cool, man.
I'll probably end up pairing them up again in the coming weeks. The female's in a shed cycle right now. I'm expecting corn eggs in the next 2 days. The 31st is supposed to be when I'm projecting her to drop.
Nice. No Baird?
And my Baird's, I believe, is gravid.
Nice.
I was checking on her the other day. She's looking extra thick. Gave her some extra food yesterday and today. Pulled the male, and she's looking good. So
excellent.
And then Brad asked how the Heloderma project's going. I was actually talking to Reed. So Sean at MP Cages and Exotics, who is a THP sponsor, is moving to Florida soon. He's kind of been going back and forth lately. He'll be in the Daytona area, which is only like a 4-hour drive. So I talked to him. I think he's projecting within the next 3 months he'll be there. And so I told, because Reed was talking about building some cages, and I texted Reed and said, well, Sean's going to be closer to me, so don't bother building cages for those. I'll keep them in Christmas tree tubs or something, and when I get them, for the time being, until I get some cages from Sean. And then, so Reed basically he just brought him out of cooling not that long ago. So he said he's gonna put some weight on them, and then when they're ready, I'll jet up there and get them. So
cool, man. Awesome. Super excited for you.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped, man.
Hell yeah.
Look, Dom's fashionably late. 2.5 hours in, and Dom finally shows up.
Hey, better late than never, right? But yeah, man, I think they'll be finding Christmas tree tubs for a little while, and then you'll have Sean make you exactly what you need, and the logistics of transport won't be so perilous.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome because anytime we need anything from him, just jet down there and grab it. It's like a 4-hour drive.
Yep. Oh. Yeah, and he'll be 3.5, 4 hours from me too. So we'll rendezvous.
Yeah.
It'll be like a mountain man retreat.
Yeah. So that'll be good.
Cool.
Other than that, I mean, that's pretty much it. I'm way more excited about this corn clutch than I probably should be.
Nice.
I don't know. That's like that female's 5 or 6 years old, and I was purposefully wanting to find a male from the same general area as her, and that male is nice. They're very different. Like, she's a much sort of brighter orange with not a whole lot of darkness or contrast to her, and then that male is like a nice deep oak brown. And,
cool.
So I'm interested to see what those look like. And it'll also be really nice to not have to wait 106 days for them to fucking hatch.
Yeah.
I feel like it's going to fly. Like when you breed the Cyanea and the other Boiga, and the incubation takes 100+ days, feels like forever. Mm-hmm. And then I'm sure with like the bears and the corns, it's like they're hatching in less than half the time. And it's like you blink and it makes them feel like they go by faster.
Yeah. So speaking of construction and caging, so for those of you who are unaware, Underground Reptiles for the past 20-25 years has done a venomous hours program so that people in Florida can get their venomous hours. And I've taught the class for 10 years now. Because of the recent law change in 2019, there hasn't been any venomous at the retail store, at Underground's retail store in DFO Beach, Florida. A lot of the animals were mine. I just took them home. Some of their stuff, wound up getting sold or moved to their farm. But we finally finished renovations of the retail store, and they made my room. So here is the room. It will be predominantly for display. The animals won't necessarily be like breeders and stuff, but that's my new micro display room. It is tight. It looks tight. It is tight. The species that we're going to put in there, we're obviously going to be very selective as to what we put on, because we want it to be cool display animals for people to see, but I also want to keep it still a diverse group so that people can come and get their hours there and train and get a good assortment of different species under their belt. And then also because of the limited space, it's got to be nothing too crazy because, let's face it, it's tight quarters. Nobody wants to work with a
giant mamba.
Yeah, giant mamba, grumpy species. It's all plate glass, and there's ventilation built in, and it's completely escape-proof. So I'm very excited. And once this does happen, I have 2 individuals lined up that want to do apprentice stuff. I'm going to see how serious they are when the time comes, and maybe even open it up to some new people. So if you live in the South Florida area and you're curious, shoot me a message on Instagram or whatever, and we'll try and get the ball rolling.
Dorothy Lapis will teach you.
We will show you the way. So, and on a separate note, I wanted to share this because I thought it's super cool. For those who have not watched my one episode of the Venomous Etiquette videos on YouTube, Venomous Etiquette videos, check it out. I got a new logo. So a good friend of mine, Alex, who does a lot of cartoon art and fan art, anime type stuff, he did a bunch of drawings of different reptiles for Tiki's geckos. So I said, "Hey man, I want a pseudo scientific illustration."
Hog nose.
Yeah, shut the hell up. So that's going to be the new logo, and I'm happy with it, man. I think it came out great. I think it looks good.
I like it.
Yeah. So I thought I'd share that, and I'm probably going to put it up on Instagram soon. And now all I got to do is make more friggin' videos.
I was going to say, now you just got to put videos up.
Yeah, right. So, and don't let me forget, I got to get with you later about music and stuff like that. So you and I will talk more about that later.
What's the problem with Premiere? What are you struggling with?
So I did a lot of TV production stuff when I was in high school and college, and a lot of it was analog, man, like straight up dial wheels. And the program, yeah, I know. And the program is so advanced that I know exactly what I want to do. I just don't know what buttons to click.
Yeah, that's the issue with Adobe stuff, dude. Let me tell you, like, it's overwhelming because you can do anything with it.
Yeah.
But if you don't know how to do, like, where to start or what to do, it's like a 90-degree learning curve.
Legit. And that's the problem. Is I have the video clips, I have the audio, like I know how I want to choreograph it, and fades here, uptakes here, sound delays. Like I know exactly how I want to orchestrate it. I just don't know how to do it.
YouTube, man.
Yeah, and I'm watching tutorial after tutorial after tutorial, and the problem is that I don't have the fundamentals of the program. So I watch these YouTube tutorials, and they're going so quick, and I'm trying to like do it step by step with them. Like I have 2 windows open. I even have 2 laptops open, and I'm too old school, man. I'm struggling.
That's how it was for me with learning InDesign for the magazine, man. It was like,
yeah,
overwhelming. Now that I've got it, it's a breeze because there's a very large percentage of stuff on that program that I probably will never use or need to use.
Right.
But getting the the basics, I've picked it up really quick, and it's not nearly as overwhelming now. But even then, like if there is something I want to know how to do, like YouTube, everything you want to know is right there. Yeah.
And like in my industry, there's a lot of bad information on YouTube. So I usually tell people, like in my line of work, I'm like, don't listen to everything you see on YouTube. Be very, very choosy with the videos that you believe. Take everything with a grain of salt. It's not the case with Adobe though, man. Like everyone seems to know their shit and they're giving you good information. It's just memorizing. Like I learned that on an Apple, like Command D is fade in and fade out. Like I got to learn all these hotkeys now. And I'm like, shit, man. Ugh.
Yeah, and there's a ton of them. Like I don't even know how they keep up with them, or how people just memorize them all, because there's shortcuts for everything on InDesign too, and it's like 6 key combinations, and I'm like, I'm not learning all those. It may take me longer to get this done, but I'm not. Right. I'm not taking the time to know all these shortcuts to make it faster.
But at the same time, it's all relative, because if I say to you, Justin, what's the difference between Dinochistrodonocudus and I don't know, Techoscutatus? Like, the difference.
Yeah.
We know it. I don't know it. You don't know this Adobe shit. So like it's all learning, man. It's back to school, right?
I mean, I've used Premiere. I didn't find Premiere to be terribly difficult. Again, it's like you were saying, it's just knowing where everything's at.
Yeah, that's it. It's knowing where everything's at.
Because I know you mentioned like just going back to iMovie, and
even
there's Premiere Rush. Like use Premiere Rush. Have you used that? That's like the sort of the dumbed down version of Premiere.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. Let me start with that. At least that'll get my feet wet, you know?
I think it's meant to be sort of the bare bones version of Premiere where you can just get stuff done quick.
Okay. I might just do that. Because, like, it's crazy, man. On iMovie, I would go into, now I can't remember what the hell the name is. Not Pages. It's basically an app that Apple has for slideshows.
Yeah.
And,
Nope.
like, I think it is Keynote. That's what it is. So I would upload graphics into Keynote, animate them, and then have that translated over and put the animation over top in iMovie. And I'm like, that was super simple. But Premiere is like, I am not Michael Bay, you know? So.
See, even Henry can use Premiere Rush. That says a lot because Henry's old.
And he's a savant, though.
He is.
A venomous savant.
This is true.
He's also outlandishly handsome.
Your beard is growing back very quickly. I noticed that earlier.
Not quick enough. Not quick enough.
Now you just look like the poacher guy from Jumanji.
Thanks a lot. Oh man. Well, we're at 2:32, man. It's a good show.
It's bedtime.
It's bedtime.
This show is brought to you by Puget Sound Pythons. Check them out on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. They have a YouTube channel. I know they haven't put anything up recently, but definitely some cool stuff that you should be watching.
Yeah, they got Saus.
They do. And a bunch of other really cool stuff.
Yeah.
So
check them out.
You'll see, well, you won't see us, but you'll hear us Thursday for episode 118 of THP.
Yeah.
And my mind's blown that this is episode 70.
70, I know. I thought about it. I was like, man, it's episode 70. We should do something crazy. I was like, it's not 100. It's not 50. It's only 70. But tonight was a good show. I enjoyed it.
It was. And then if you want to make our lives easier, if anybody has anything that you want us to cover or talk about, feel free to message us with it. Because I feel like every week you and I are like, what are we talking about? And I'm like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Part of me likes it. I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? For all the people that like the Jungle Book.
Who?
Oh, God. I am old.
Anyway.
Puget Sound Pythons, check them out. Snakes and Stogies, episode 70. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.
Dom and them want to plan episode, but
that's not going to happen.
No. Start your own, Dom. Yeah. Snakes and Stamens.
Yeah. No.
Andy earlier at the very beginning of the show asked about April samplers. There will be samplers next month. We just used this month for the lighters, which I'm hoping ship soon. I haven't gotten any emails or anything saying they have shipped. But as soon as I get them in, I will make sure that everything looks good and get them out to everybody. And yeah, I'll get April samplers together. And then we'll do another raffle next month, which is going to have some cool stuff. Because the Venom Life guys Brent said he'd throw in some things for the raffle. So
yep.
We'll keep you posted on that if you're in the Snakes and Stogies group on Facebook.
Yeah, check it out.
We will see y'all later.
Bye-bye.